Roughly 30% of symphony orchestras' melodies trace back to flutes, yet for someone with aulophobia, the fear of flutes or flute music, that silver tube is less instrument, more alarm siren. The soft, breathy tone others call soothing registers as a high-pitched warning, while quick trills feel like drills boring straight into the skull. Accounts of how the dread begins vary. One thread points to primary school recorders. Shrill, squeaky notes blasted in cramped classrooms set nerves jangling early. Another links it to folklore. Pied Piper tales, where a flute lures children away, casting the instrument as a tool of unseen control. Add a surprise street busker encounter, where an unexpected high C pierced the air, and the brain locks flute to both threat into permanent storage. Everyday life adapts. Elevator music that slips in panpipes calls for an urgent headphone grab. Classical radio stations are avoided entirely. Even video game soundtracks get pre-scanned for woodwind solos. Musicians in marching parades prompt cross-street detours, and antique shops displaying decorative flutes draw rapid exits. Music therapists note the fear often zeroes in on pitch and sustain rather than the instrument's appearance. Some aulophobes therefore start with altered audio, slowing a flute track to half speed so notes drop an octave, masking the timbre. Listening in short, timed bursts teaches the auditory system that the melody, stripped of its shriek, is simply patterned air. Only after that bass line feels safe do they test the real register, ideally at a soft volume and for a very short phrase, proving the sound needn't slice through calm like glass. Mageirocophobia, the fear of cooking, turns a sizzling pan into a fault line. Statistics say home kitchens spark half of all residential fires. For someone with this phobia, every snap of hot oil is proof. They imagine smoke alarms shrieking, guests waiting, and raw chicken lurking with invisible bacteria. Many stories trace back to a single kitchen disaster. A parent who yelled over burned sauce, a stove flame that whooshed too high, or a televised chef competition where one mistake sent contestants packing. The brain connects heat plus timing plus judgment and stamps the whole scene as hazardous. The avoidance workarounds grow creative. Ready meals stack in the freezer, birthday cakes come from bakeries, and grocery carts tilt heavily toward no-cook snacks. Vacation rentals require microwaves at minimum. Some travellers even pack an electric kettle so they can stick to instant soups. Social invitations shift from "come for dinner" to "let's grab takeout instead," sparing them the anxiety of hosting. Food psychologists note that fear clusters around multitasking, multiple burners, precise temperatures, raw food safety. Because of that, some mageirocophobes experiment with single-step recipes. Think toaster oven flatbread or pre-chopped salad kits. Success with one-button equipment shows that not every meal involves a juggling act, helping the mind downgrade the kitchen from danger zone to controlled workspace. How about Italian? Silence, then a faint, whatever you prefer. For someone with decidophobia, the fear of making decisions, even choosing a dinner spot feels like steering a ship through fog. Every option branches into new what-ifs, hidden costs, unseen consequences, regret that could echo for years. Psychologists link the fear to overwhelm, but its first spark is often sharp. A big choice gone wrong, selecting the wrong major, buying a lemon car, watching parents argue over the house they purchased. The lesson learned: decision equals blame, better to let someone else pick. Daily life morphs into delegation. Streaming queues default to top recommendations, grocery runs follow whatever's on the end cap display, and vacations hinge on packaged tours with fixed itineraries. One office worker installed a browser extension that auto-generates lunch orders from a shortlist, sparing her the agony of scanning menus. Economists note that modern abundance only turns the screw. 30 kinds of toothpaste make avoidance look sensible. Some decidophobes chip away at the tension with coin flip drills. They write 2 trivial options on a sticky note, green tea or black, flip a coin, and commit without review. The goal isn't perfect outcomes, it's proving the world doesn't collapse when heads or tails decides. Over time, those micro-wins allow bigger choices to edge out of the fog, still nerve-wracking, but no longer impossible to name aloud. Scroll any comment section, and the numbers climb fast. Hundreds of opinions, most offered by strangers you'll never meet. For someone with allodoxaphobia, the fear of other people's opinions, that endless stream isn't background chatter, it's incoming fire. A casual, "What do you think?" can tighten throats, because every answer risks judgment ricocheting back. Unlike simple shyness, this phobia often grows from repeated stings. A teacher reading out an essay peppered with red ink, social media posts mocked into viral memes, or a rigid family culture where wrong ideas drew public scolding. The mind learns to treat feedback as peril, so it dodges by default. Workarounds weave into everyday life. Wardrobe choices hover at neutral to avoid comment, meetings mute microphones unless speaking is mandatory, and smartphone notifications turn off to keep app feedback at bay. Even polling stickers on friends' Instagram stories feel like tiny traps. Tapping either option might reveal too much. Sociologists note that opinions hurt most when they land uninvited, so some people with allodoxaphobia practice controlled asks. They'll request input from one trusted friend on a low-stakes matter, say which of two playlist covers looks better, then step away before checking the answer. Limiting both the audience and the topic lets the brain log a safe exchange, reducing the sense that every outside view equals an audit of self-worth. 8 meteorites strike Earth every day, almost all too small to notice. Yet for people with uranophobia, the fear of the sky or heavens, that statistic reads like a cosmic threat report. Look up, and the mind envisions falling rocks, lightning bolts, or an endless vault just waiting to drop. The feeling often germinates during a drama-charged sky moment, the first glimpse of a tornado watch map, a vivid childhood sermon about judgment descending from above, or a physics lesson that painted space as a vacuum indifferent to life. Once the brain pairs overhead with overwhelming, even a clear blue expanse can feel heavy, as though the dome itself leans closer. Daily routes get rerouted, rooftop restaurants are declined, convertible cars stay permanently capped, and cloud-watching apps, soothing for many, go deleted to avoid storm alerts. Some travellers time airport drop-offs so they never see the jet they're about to board arch into open sky. Astrophysicists point out that the sky is mostly empty safety, but logic rarely quiets the primal alarm. One approach people with uranophobia sometimes try is filtered sky, viewing time-lapse videos taken through skylights or tree canopies. The branches or window frame act like visual handrails, breaking the vastness into smaller panels and proving that nothing catastrophic happens as the clouds glide by. Over repeated sessions, that sense of scale can shrink the sky from an all-encompassing menace to a moving mural, still immense, but no longer poised to fall. Nice weather tonight. Want to grab a drink? For most, that's small talk. For someone with sarmassophobia, the fear of flirting or sexual love play, it's a siren. Compliments, playful winks, even a slightly lingering smile can feel like the first rumble of an avalanche they can't outrun. The roots differ. Some trace it to a teenage party where teasing turned coercive, others to overheard stories of dating gone wrong, or a culture that framed desire as dangerous. Whatever the spark, the brain welds light-hearted intimacy to loss of control, so every spark now looks like a potential wildfire. Everyday life reconfigures around the phobia. Dating apps stay unopened despite friends' nudges. Karaoke nights, avoided, too many lyrics about romance. Wardrobe choices tilt deliberately neutral, minimizing comments like, "That color looks amazing on you." Even harmless emoji, wink face, can trigger a quick mute of the chat. Relationship counselors observing the pattern note that it isn't disinterest. It's a fear of misread signals. Some people with sarmassophobia find small group settings less charged. board game cafes, trivia teams, collaborative volunteer work. Shared tasks keep conversation goal-focused, letting social warmth build without the spotlight of direct flirtation, and offering proof that friendly interactions don't have to tip into territory that feels unsafe. The museum lights dim for closing, and the hall of wax figures casts long, motionless shadows. For someone with automatomophobia, the fear of human-like figures such as mannequins, wax statues, or animatronics, this scene feels less like culture and more like an ambush in slow motion. A frozen smile on a storefront dummy, the glassy stare of a vintage ventriloquist dummy, even a theme park robot mouthing cheerful lines, each looks ready to blink when backs are turned. Origins vary. Some recall childhood visits to wax museums where lifelike eyes followed them down red carpets. Others point to horror films where mannequins swapped places between cuts. A few trace it to department store night shifts, empty except for rows of silent torsos in perfect posture. The mind learns almost human equals unpredictable. Daily life adjusts accordingly. Clothing shops become click-and-collect zones to avoid fitting room corridors lined with mannequins. Haunted house attractions are non-starters, and family vacations skip theme parks famous for animatronic pirates or singing dolls. Even makeup tutorials using practice heads can trigger the uneasy sense of being watched. Psychologists note the discomfort stems from the uncanny valley. Objects that look human but fall just short unsettle our pattern recognition circuits. Because the issue is visual realism, some automatonophobes ease in with obviously artificial models, blocky Lego figures or cartoonish mascots, observing them in well-lit spaces. Over time, logging harmless encounters with these exaggerated forms can soften the instinctive jolt when a flawlessly sculpted mannequin appears in the corner of the eye. Anthropophobia, the fear of people or social situations, shrinks the world to a one-person radius. A knock at the door can feel like a quake. Crowded sidewalks become obstacle courses of darting eye contact and unspoken expectations. The anxiety isn't mere shyness, it's a pulse-pounding certainty that every move will be judged, misread, or echoed in gossip. The first spark is often vivid. A classroom presentation derailed by snickers, family gatherings where arguments erupted without warning, or a viral social media pylon that left the screen and reputation scorched. The brain logs, people equals unpredictable danger, so even friendly faces can look like interrogation lights. Coping strategies weave silently into routines. Grocery runs shift to late-night slots when aisles are empty. Video games replace in-person hobbies. Avatars feel safer than handshakes. Public transport seats stay single if possible, and restaurant takeout windows beat dining in every time. One survey found anthropophobes more likely to choose remote work not for flexibility, but to dodge hallway hellos. Psychologists point out that the fear centers on perceived scrutiny rather than actual threat. Because of that, some individuals experiment with one-way exposure, starting a podcast or anonymous blog where they speak to an unseen audience. The voice goes out, feedback trickles back on their terms, and the loop demonstrates that interaction needn't implode. Over time, replying to a single listener's comment can feel manageable, another small proof that connection, while uneasy, doesn't automatically detonate. A birthday cake arrives, candles flicker, and applause erupts. Yet a knot forms in the stomach of someone with gerascophobia, the fear of aging. Wrinkles aren't just lines, they're countdown marks. Grey hair feels like a siren, every joint crack a warning. The body's best days are slipping away. The dread often traces to witnessing decline up close, a grandparent's slow shuffle with a walker, a parent's memory lapses, or a celebrity idol's sudden before and after headline. Advertising piles on, anti-aging creams, step counters, makeover reveals that frame growing older as a battle already lost. The brain merges age with loss of autonomy, and even a harmless laugh line can spark a mirror check. Protective rituals emerge. Skincare shelves overflow with serums labelled youth. Birthday celebrations shrink to private takeout dinners. No candles, please. Fitness trackers ping relentlessly, pushing daily step goals that feel less about health and more about outrunning time. Some plan vacations to age-defying clinics, chasing treatments that promise gradual rewind. Gerontologists note that fear often clusters around unpredictability, what ailment might appear, which ability might fade. Because of that, people grappling with gerascophobia sometimes focus on skill building rather than wrinkle fighting, learning a language, mastering sourdough, or joining beginner coding classes. Each new competence reframes aging as expansion instead of erosion, reminding the mind that while clocks tick forward, abilities and interests can tick upward too. Job interviews, first dates, even casual board game nights, events that many view as opportunities strike terror in those with Kakorrhaphiophobia, the fear of failure or defeat. In their inner narrative, every misstep is magnified. A typo becomes grounds for dismissal, a wrong trivia answer proof of incompetence, a dropped coffee the start of public humiliation. The seed is often planted by high-stakes moments, a spelling bee fumble replayed on school assembly screens, a crucial penalty kick that cost the team a championship, or growing up under constant "A isn't good enough" pressure. Eventually, the brain welds performance to self-worth so tightly that risk itself feels radioactive. Life contracts into safe zones, ambitious projects are declined before they're offered, creative hobbies stay hidden in sketchbooks, and social competition, pub quizzes, friendly tennis matches, is politely dodged. One software developer kept brilliant code snippets on a private drive for years, fearing a peer review might expose hidden bugs. Psychologists note the fear feeds on all-or-nothing thinking. To loosen its grip, some people test micro-losses, choosing a new recipe knowing it might flop, or joining a low-stakes open mic where the audience is tiny and forgiving. Recording what actually happens, usually mild, often humorous, helps rewrite the equation from failure equals catastrophe to failure equals feedback, a small but liberating shift. Open a fresh bottle of vitamins and there it is, a fluffy white plug nestled on top. For people with sidonglobophobia, the fear of cotton balls, that harmless wad, might as well be a live tarantula. The sight alone can spark goosebumps. The faint squeak of fibres rubbing together feels like nails on a chalkboard amplified through headphones. Why cotton? Many stories point to childhood vaccinations. A stinging jab followed by a nurse pressing an alcohol-soaked ball onto tender skin. The brain captures the texture, smell, and tiny fibres snagging on a scab, then files the entire object under medical pain. Others link it to sensory quirks. Microscopic threads catching on dry fingertips send a shiver up the spine, reinforcing the association every time a cotton-tipped swab appears. Workarounds get surprisingly creative. Makeup kits stock gauze pads instead of cotton rounds. Pill bottles are opened outdoors so the plug can be flicked straight into a trash bin. Art projects using cotton clouds are politely declined. One office even swapped whiteboard erasers after a staffer confessed the felt resembled tightly packed cotton and spiked her pulse. Occupational therapists note the phobia hinges on texture and sound more than appearance. Because of this, some sidonglobophobes start desensitizing with tightly woven cotton fabric, no loose fibres, no squeak, folded into a small square. Handling it for a few seconds at a time shows the material can stay silent and contained, planting the first seed of trust before confronting the dreaded fluffy sphere. Euphobia, the fear of good news, flips celebration on its head. A ringing phone that most people hope brings a promotion or engagement instead tightens the chest. Good news means the other shoe is about to drop. Compliments, surprise bonuses, even a doctor's all clear can stir dread rather than relief. The phobia often sprouts from a whiplash memory, a raise followed by sudden layoffs, an all-excellent health scan just before a relative's diagnosis, or childhood warnings not to laugh too loud or you'll cry tomorrow. The mind links positive announcements to looming backlash, treating optimism like tempting fate. Daily habits skew defensive. Lottery ads get muted, email subject lines reading "great news" sit unopened, and social gatherings that revolve around toasts feel like jinx factories. Some people preemptively downplay success. It's nothing big, probably temporary, hoping to dodge whatever cosmic correction might be queued up. Psychologists note that euphobia revolves around pattern watching. If joy once preceded pain, the brain keeps that timeline on loop. People managing the fear sometimes adopt neutral framing. When good news arrives, say a project praise email, they label it a data point rather than a triumph, jot it down, and move on. Treating positives as simple facts, not heights to tumble from, can gradually deflate the dread balloon that inflates with every unexpected win. Playgrounds echo with laughter, yet for someone with pedophobia, the fear of children, those carefree shouts trigger tension. Small hands waving unpredictably, sudden high-pitched questions, and boundless energy combine into a scene that feels chaotic rather than cute. Even a stroller rolling down the sidewalk can prompt a swift detour. The fear often sprouts from earlier overwhelm. Babysitting gone wrong, younger siblings whose tantrums filled the house, or a hospital pediatrics rotation where illnesses and heartbreak mixed with tiny voices. The mind blends unpredictability with responsibility, branding kids as volatile hazards you're expected to manage. Lifestyle adjustments soon follow. Brunch spots with family seating get skipped, friends' baby shower invites remain unanswered, and holiday visits are timed for after bedtime. Streaming queues avoid films starring precocious youngsters, and noise-cancelling headphones become essential on flights heavy with toddler traffic. Child development researchers observe that pedophobia hinges less on malice and more on loss of control. Children don't stick to adult scripts. Because of that, some phobic adults test the waters in structured settings, volunteering at libraries during quiet story hours where another adult leads, or attending daytime museum slots with clear behavior guidelines. Seeing kids operate within gentle rules can help the brain refile unpredictable as manageable, trimming the edge off those playground echoes. Just walking past the sliding glass doors of an emergency ward can spike heart rates for anyone, but nosocomephobia, the fear of hospitals, turns that doorway into a hard line. The corridors conjure images of beeping monitors, chemical disinfectant, and whispered bad news echoing off tiled walls. For a phobic mind, every white coat signals looming loss. The fear often takes root in a single searing memory. A childhood appendectomy where anesthetic masks felt suffocating, long hours in a waiting room during a relative's final moments, or TV dramas replaying code blue chaos night after night. Once hospital equals trauma, even passing ambulance sirens can tug at that thread. Daily logistics twist accordingly. Routine checkups slide years overdue. Relatives recovering from surgery receive get-well texts instead of bedside visits, and vacation plans rank destinations partly by distance to the nearest clinic. The farther the better, out of sight, out of mind. Insurance cards sit pristine in wallets, rarely produced because showing up feels riskier than any untreated ailment. Health psychologists note the dread isn't only about disease, it's also about helplessness, submitting to unfamiliar procedures and jargon you can't translate. Some nosocomephobes temper anxiety by first visiting neutral medical spaces, a quiet physical therapy studio, an optometrist's boutique-like office, or a small outpatient lab for a quick blood test. Logging calm experiences in lower-key settings can soften the association before tackling the fluorescent maze of a full hospital wing. A single typo in an office memo might earn a chuckle from most co-workers, but for someone with enosiophobia, the fear of criticism or blame, even that tiny slip feels like a career-ending spotlight. The pulse jumps at red ink edits, performance reviews loom like sentencing hearings, and group projects can feel less like collaboration and more like walking a tightrope above a chorus of judges. The fear often sprouts from formative stings, a parent whose praise always arrived with a but, a teacher who announced mistakes to the entire class, or social media piles on that turned minor errors into public spectacle. The brain begins filing feedback under threat, and soon any hint of evaluation sparks the same adrenaline surge as a physical danger. Daily habits morph into preemptive defense. Emails get triple proofread, then left in drafts overnight, just in case. Social posts stay in private notes folders, never published. In meetings, opinions remain unspoken unless bulletproof citations back every word. One manager admitted scheduling Monday reports for late Friday afternoon, hoping fewer eyeballs would notice flaws before the weekend. Communication coaches note that enosiophobia isn't about disliking improvement. It's the anticipation of judgment's sting. To take the edge off, some people ease into low-stakes feedback loops, submitting anonymous short stories to hobby forums or sharing a doodle with a small supportive group. Hearing constructive comments without a personal name tag attached lets the brain observe criticism as information rather than accusation, gradually loosening the knot that tightens at every imagined "you did it wrong." Hair is usually an afterthought until a loose strand brushes your skin and sparks a shiver. For people with chaetophobia, the fear of hair, the reaction is instant. Revulsion at stray locks on a pillow, anxiety when a barber's clippings scatter across the floor, even tension when pets shed on the couch. It isn't limited to other people's strands. Sometimes their own hair feels like an invasive tangle they can't escape. The first jolt often comes from sensory shock. A surprise wad stuck to shower tiles, or a hairstyling mishap where scissors nicked the ear and left a bloody mess among clumps of cuttings. Films that use clumps of wet hair in drains for horror imagery cement the dread, turning every drain catcher into a potential nightmare. Daily routines adapt quickly. Vacuuming happens twice as often, lint rollers sit in every room, and hair salons are swapped for DIY buzz cuts that drop straight into the trash. Some chaetophobes switch to short hairstyles to minimize shedding. Others keep ponytails tight, so no rogue strands drift onto shoulders during the day. Dermatologists note the fear focuses on loose hair more than attached hair, so a common first step is handling contained forms, braided wigs on a mannequin, or tightly woven hairpieces sealed in plastic. Observing that the fibers stay put and don't stick to skin helps the mind reclassify at least some hair encounters as neutral rather than contaminating. Ephebiphobia, the fear of teenagers, can make a harmless pack of high schoolers on a sidewalk feel like an approaching riot. Hoodies up, earbuds in, voices pitching from joke to shout. For someone with the phobia, each cue spells potential mockery or unpredictable behavior. A single snicker can sting louder than a car horn. Even skateboards clacking against pavement sound like warning drums. Roots often lie in sharp memories, being singled out by older teens for teasing, witnessing viral videos of youth-led flash mobs, or news cycles framing juvenile crime as an ever-rising wave. Pop culture piles on with menacing gangs in movies and TV, so the brain stitches teen cohort to threat almost by default. Avoidance patterns grow stealthy. Grocery runs shift to school hours when halls, not stores, hold the crowds. Evening buses get skipped if sports teams just finished practice. Neighborhood parks are enjoyed at dawn, long before after-school hangouts begin. One apartment hunter even cross-checked rents against proximity to secondary schools, preferring longer commutes over daily brushes with dismissal bell traffic. Sociologists note the fear revolves around perceived unpredictability, teens still testing boundaries, signaling in slang adults may not decode. Because of that, some ephebiphobes find mellow exposure through structured youth activities, volunteering at library homework clubs or community garden projects where clear rules and adult supervisors frame interactions. Observing teenagers focused on tasks rather than loitering in unscripted groups can gradually reclassify them from wild cards to just another age bracket navigating the day. Imagine flinching not at spiders, heights, or public speaking, but at the very idea that some fear might strike next. That looping dread is phobophobia, the fear of phobias themselves. A headline about airline anxiety, a friend mentioning claustrophobia, even reading this sentence can light the fuse. What if I catch that fear too? The cycle usually begins after one bad panic episode, say, getting stuck in an elevator and spiraling. The sensation is so intense that once it passes, the mind keeps scanning for the next trigger. Any hint of nervousness becomes evidence of a new phobia forming, which raises anxiety further, you see the loop. Daily life turns into a preventive routine. Self-help sites stay bookmarked but unread. They might plant new worries. Horror films are out of the question, and casual conversations get steered away from someone's worst nightmare stories. One office worker wears noise-cancelling earbuds on public transit. Not because crowds bother him, but to avoid overhearing strangers discuss fears he hasn't thought of yet. Clinicians note that phobophobia isn't about specific objects. It's a meta-anxiety fed by imagination more than experience. People who find relief often adopt a catalogue check habit, writing down the fears they actually encountered that day and noting whether anything bad followed, almost always no. Seeing a blank or modest list helps the brain realise that potential phobias aren't lining up at the door, ready to pounce. A tick-tock in a quiet room, a digital clock rolling from 11:59 to 12:00, tiny sounds and numbers that most people barely register. For someone with chronomentrophobia, the fear of clocks and the steady passage of time, each tick feels like a hammer falling. Wall clocks seem to glare, countdown widgets on laptops look accusatory, and even wristwatches whisper, "You're running out." The feeling often starts after a vivid deadline disaster. Missing a flight boarding call, watching a hospital monitor mark the final seconds of a loved one's life, or enduring panic during a timed exam where the sweeping second hand felt louder than a fire alarm. The brain latches onto the meter of seconds as a threat instead of a tool. Daily routines shift to dodge reminders. Microwave timers stay hidden behind tea towels, phone lock screens display minimalist faces with no second hand, and meetings rely on gentle calendar pop-ups rather than visible conference room clocks. Some people arrange furniture so any timepiece sits behind them. Out of sight means briefly out of mind. Horologists point out that clocks merely translate motion of the planet. It's the interpretation that hurts. Because of that, chronomentrophobes sometimes experiment with soft time. They'll set a single ambient alarm, wind chimes, ocean waves, for broad cues, lunch, wrap-up, bedtime, while covering every visual clock face for the day. Living by gentle signals rather than relentless ticks helps prove that life can still flow on schedule without the soundtrack of passing seconds amplifying every heartbeat. An escalator staircase hums to life, the metal steps cycling endlessly, and someone with mechanophobia, the fear of machines, feels their pulse spike. It isn't just hulking factory robots that unsettle. Vending machines grinding ice, car washes with spinning brushes, even automatic doors sliding open seem capable of sudden betrayal. Origins often trace to jarring encounters with moving parts. A childhood ride-on mower that revved too close, a printer that snagged jewellery, or news footage of assembly line accidents looping on TV. The memory of gears biting down convinces the brain that any whirring device might lurch out of its programmed path. Daily life narrows in unexpected ways. Self-checkout lanes are avoided in favour of staffed registers. Gym memberships lapse because treadmills feel like high-speed conveyor belts. Road trips lean on older cars with manual windows and minimal dashboard tech. One university student chose upper floors over the engineering basement so she wouldn't pass the 3D printers clicking through the night. Industrial psychology research suggests the anxiety centres on autonomy. Machines operate without human instinct, so their next move feels unreadable. To soften that edge, people with mechanophobia sometimes start by observing transparent devices, see-through coffee grinders, clockwork models, where every cog is visible. Watching the parts loop in predictable rhythms helps reframe the machine from lurking monster to glass-boxed puzzle, gradually shrinking the threat one rotation at a time. Neophobia, the fear of new things or unfamiliar experiences, turns the promise of variety into a minefield. A cafe swaps its menu, a phone's operating system updates overnight, a friend suggests trying salsa dancing. Each novelty sets off unease rather than curiosity. Comfort lies in well-worn paths, identical breakfasts, and software versions left untouched for years. The feeling often sprouts in periods of upheaval, a sudden move that made every street sign foreign, a workplace reorganization that rendered proven skills obsolete, or a childhood home where change usually preceded conflict. The brain starts flagging anything untested as potential disruption, so sameness becomes a shield. Routines solidify hard. Grocery carts repeat the same 15 items, vacation plans circle back to identical resorts, and smartphones stay on "remind me later" for every feature prompt. Even small shifts, new toothpaste flavor, rearranged furniture, can spark a low hum of tension. One office veteran kept an outdated word processor on a private thumb drive, bypassing the company's cloud suite entirely. Behavioral researchers note that novelty triggers both opportunity circuits and threat circuits. In neophobia, the latter simply wins. To tip the balance, some people lean on micro-changes, using a different mug on Mondays, walking an alternate block on lunch break. Tiny swaps slip under the radar yet log as successes, showing the brain that the world can shift without everything crashing down, easing the path to bigger firsts when they inevitably arrive. A balloon pops, a car horn blares, a plate crashes to the floor. Each jolt of volume sends someone with Ligyrophobia, the fear of loud noises, into a full-body flinch. It isn't just the decibels, it's the suddenness. Fire alarms, thunderclaps, even hand dryers in rest-stop bathrooms feel like ambushes for the ears. The dread often starts with a formative shock, a fireworks shell exploding too close, a metal pan dropped behind a toddler's head, or an unexpected gun range outing that rattled the skull. Once the nervous system pairs loud with danger, it keeps the reflex on a hair trigger. Even movie trailers advertising action flicks can spike blood pressure before the first explosion rolls across the surround sound. Lifestyle tweaks pile up quickly. Noise-cancelling headphones become everyday gear, restaurants are vetted for decibel ratings, and July 4th invitations earn a gentle decline. Home smoke detectors get tested in socks-over-the-ears fashion, and blender sessions happen only after neighbours are out. 2 birds, 1 noise-dampened stone. Audiologists note that predictability matters as much as volume. Because of that, Ligyrophobes sometimes practice with count-in booms, playing an audio clip where a narrator announces "bang in 3, 2, 1" before a controlled sound burst. Knowing exactly when the noise will arrive helps the brain log loudness without panic, gradually teaching the reflex that intensity alone isn't the enemy, surprise is, and surprise can be managed. In a world where roughly 50% of adults remain single at any given time, alone is normal. Yet for someone with anthropophobia, the fear of staying unmarried or single, that status feels like standing on a shrinking island. Invitations arrive stamped with +1 blanks, apartment leases tick past anniversaries, and each empty passenger seat whispers, "Still just you." The anxiety often germinates in comparison. Childhood dinners spotlighted model couples, parents praising relatives for finally settling down. Movies framed soulmates as the only route to fulfillment, while social feeds now scroll endless engagement reels. Add 1 or 2 breakups that ended abruptly, goodbye texts, profiles wiped of shared photos, and the mind pairs solitude with permanent rejection. Everyday patterns orbit the worry. Dating apps get overchecked, then purged in late-night frustration. Weekends crowd with speed date events, networking mixers, even hobby clubs chosen primarily for potential matches. Friends' milestone posts trigger silent math. If they met at 28 and married at 31, I have X months left. One anthropophobic lawyer confessed to wearing a faux engagement ring on business trips, convinced it shielded her from the dread of being perceived as unpaired. Relationship therapists point out that the fear centers on identity tied to relational status rather than loneliness itself. To loosen that grip, some people build solo milestones, celebrating personal wins, finishing a language course, completing a 10K on their own timetable. Logging achievements that rely only on self-commitment can rebalance value away from external validation, easing the sense that worth hangs exclusively on a yet-to-arrive partner. Thalassophobia, the fear of deep bodies of water, makes an ocean view feel less like endless blue and more like a bottomless chasm. Standing on a pier, the mind pictures unseen shapes gliding below, pressure crushing lungs, and a surface too vast to swim back to once panic sets in. Many point to a single, unsettling moment, being knocked under by a surprise wave, watching a documentary where submersibles disappear into blackness, or noticing how quickly lake water turns from sunlit green to impenetrable ink. Add pop culture images of leviathans and shipwrecks, and the brain stitches depth to danger you can't measure. Everyday life shrinks inland. Beach vacations reroute to mountain cabins, cruise ads get instant deletes, and swimming pools are fine, so long as that diving well with the dark drain stays off limits. Even aerial footage of whales on a nature channel can spark the uneasy thought, that animal is bigger than the boat. Marine psychologists note the unease centers on what can't be seen beneath the surface, not the water itself. Because of that, thalassophobes sometimes start with clarity, snorkeling in shallow, glass-clear lagoons where the sandy bottom sits an arm's length away. Seeing toes, coral, and the exit path in one glance helps the nervous system log water without the tag of abyss, an early step toward viewing the ocean as environment, not void. Spotlight warms your face, a mic waits inches away, and dozens or thousands of eyes focus forward. For people with glossophobia, the fear of public speaking, that setup feels like standing on a cliff edge in a gusting wind. Voice shakes, heart pounds loud enough to drown out thoughts, and every silent second stretches like taffy. Many trace the dread to a formative flop, stumbling through a classroom book report, forgetting lyrics at a school concert, or freezing during a best man toast where jokes landed flat. The brain files audience alongside exposure and judgment, so even a brief team update in a conference room can trigger the same fight-or-flight surge. Daily workarounds multiply. Emails replace stand-up briefings, university courses get chosen for essay exams over presentations, and weddings elicit a firm, "I'll pass on speeches." One project manager records tutorials instead of live demos, editing out every and pause before hitting send. Speech coaches note that glossophobia is less about words than about perceived loss of control. Because of that, some speakers start with captive audiences that offer zero feedback, reading passages aloud while driving alone, or narrating recipes to a voice memo app. The sound of their own voice projecting into space, minus live reaction, helps the body acclimate. When a small friendly group eventually replaces the empty car, the step up feels manageable rather than monumental. Night falls, eyelids drift, and for most people dreams unfurl like short films. Yet for those with ageirophobia, the fear of dreams, the prospect of closing their eyes feels like buying a ticket to a theatre that may screen horror without warning. Vivid nightmares, sleep paralysis hallucinations, or unsettling lucid sequences loop in memory long after dawn, turning bedtime into a tense countdown. The fear often starts with a streak of disturbing nights, recurring chases through collapsing houses, loved ones vanishing in smoke, or waking unable to move while a dark figure lingers at the bed's edge. Add pop culture talk of dream meanings foretelling doom, and the mind labels every subconscious image a potential omen. Daily life adapts in subtle, draining ways. Caffeine flows late to postpone sleep, bedroom TVs stay on for noise anchoring, and alarm apps schedule hourly chimes that jolt the dreamer back before deep REM stages kick in. Morning conversations about crazy dreams receive curt nods. Better not relive the night. Sleep researchers observe that oneirophobia isn't just fear of bad content, it's fear of losing control inside one's own head. People managing the anxiety sometimes dabble in reality testing routines used by lucid dreamers, checking a digital clock twice or pressing a finger against the opposite palm while awake. Recognizing those cues mid-dream can remind the mind, "I'm still in charge," which many report reduces dread over what the night might project. Perfectly balanced patterns, identical windows on a facade, a Rorschach ink blot, or a face filtered for flawless alignment look soothing to most. To someone with symmetrophobia, the fear of symmetry, that visual harmony feels uncanny, like staring at a world that's been copied and pasted too precisely. The mind senses something artificial, almost robotic, in the mirror image repeat. The unease can spark from early art lessons praising perfect balance or childhood exposure to eerily symmetrical masks. Architectural tours showcasing palatial corridors where one half perfectly mirrors the other sometimes finish the job, tilting admiration into discomfort that lingers long after the guide's voice fades. Day to day, the phobia influences surprising choices. Desks accumulate objects off-center, gallery visits skip rooms filled with geometric abstraction, and smartphone wallpapers avoid pattern tiles. Some people even style hair intentionally asymmetric, side part, single earring, to keep reflections from feeling too exact. Perception researchers suggest the tension comes from evolution's knack for flagging too perfect as potentially non-natural. Think camouflage or predators posing as prey. Because it's about visuals, a few symmetrophobes experiment with controlled flaws, printing a near-symmetrical mandala, then colouring one segment slightly off hue. The exercise keeps the structure visible while proving a tiny imperfection is enough to relax the eye, nudging the brain away from its reflexive unease when flawless balance appears in the wild. Stacks of papers slightly askew, shoes lined unevenly at an entryway, minor mess for most, but magnets for dread in someone with a taxophobia, the fear of disorder or untidiness. A crooked picture frame can pull their attention like a fire alarm. A cluttered desk may feel outright suffocating. The fear often anchors in moments when chaos snowballed. A misplaced document blamed for workplace embarrassment, a childhood bedroom inspection that ended in punishment, or moving day boxes scattered so randomly that prized items vanished for weeks. The brain records disarray as a breach of safety and control, so even casual pile-ups now read like looming threats. Daily routines crystallize into rituals. Morning starts with meticulous bed-making, hospital corners, no creases. Pantries arrange labels forward and heights descending. If a guest shifts one can, tension spikes until it's silently corrected. Digital life isn't spared. Email inboxes reach zero by sundown, and phone apps sit in perfectly balanced rows. Psychotherapists note that ataxophobia blends aesthetic discomfort with a deeper, what else might unravel, worry. Addressing just the surface clutter rarely helps. Instead, some people test tolerance in low-impact zones. They'll let a single drawer grow slightly mixed, pens beside paperclips, while tracking anxiety levels. Over time, realizing no crisis follows that tiny pocket of mess can dial back the brain's all-or-nothing alarm when the wider world refuses to stay perfectly aligned. A weather alert pings, severe storm possible. For most, it's a mental note to grab an umbrella. For those with ligyrophobia, the fear of tornadoes or hurricanes, it's the sound of looming doom. Doppler maps morph into swirling monsters, and every gust rattling a window frame feels like the start of a funnel reaching down. The dread often begins with vivid imagery, grainy news footage of shredded rooftops, childhood drills crouched in echoing hallways, or a real storm where sirens wailed and sky turned bruise-green before hail pummeled the siding. The brain welds wind to helplessness, so even distant thunder can spike adrenaline. Storm season rituals become second nature. Weather apps refresh hourly. Basements stock batteries, bottled water, and helmets. Vacations avoid coastal regions entirely during summer. One ligyrophobia neighbour installed an underground shelter in a state where twisters are rare. Peace of mind at the cost of a second mortgage. Meteorologists point out that most storm warnings end harmlessly, but logic can't quiet a memory of debris swirling on televised loops. People looking to blunt the fear sometimes follow scale filtering. They track breezy days on a simple chart, colouring calm ones green, windy but safe days yellow, reserving red only for verified severe events. Over weeks, the stack of green squares reminds the mind that blue skies vastly outnumber torn open ones, easing the urge to bolt at every rustle of leaves. Demonophobia, the fear of demons or evil spirits, turns creaking floorboards into whispered warnings. Late-night wind rattling a window frame feels like claws testing glass, and horror movie trailers with glowing red eyes can linger in memory long after the screen goes dark. The fear often seeds in childhood stories. Elders cautioning that ill-kept rooms invite spirits, Sunday sermons depicting brimstone realms, or sleepovers where a friend's Ouija board moved on its own. Add a bout of sleep paralysis, waking frozen while shadowy figures hover, and the brain locks supernatural threat to any unexplained sound. Daily routines pick up protective layers. Nightlights stay on past adulthood, mirrors get draped after dark, and true crime podcasts are fine, but anything labelled paranormal earns a swift skip. Halloween decorations featuring horned figures may reroute an entire grocery trip, and some keep salt jars at doorways, old folklore insurance against whatever lurks unseen. The dread hinges on uncertainty, intangible forces you can't measure or predict. Because of that, people with demonophobia sometimes ground themselves in sensory checks. When a noise sparks alarm, they pause to list 3 concrete things they can see, hear, or touch: a ticking clock, refrigerator hum, the texture of a blanket. Redirecting focus to the verifiable world helps shrink space for imagined terrors, showing the mind that most midnight creaks have perfectly human explanations. Quarterly targets loom large on the office wall, but for someone with automatomophobia, the fear of failure, even a minor to-do list can feel like a cliff face. A single typo in an email spurs images of pink slips. A missed gym session spirals into visions of future health crises. The mind sets the pass mark at 100%, then circles every scenario where less might happen. Seeds often sprout early. A school report card where one B wiped out a row of A's, a parent's disappointed sigh after a lost soccer match, or a public stumble that classmates replayed for weeks. The lesson absorbed is simple and ruthless. Anything short of perfect equals disaster. The phobia shapes daily choices. Ambitious job postings stay bookmarked but never applied to. Blank sketchbooks pile up because drafts might disappoint, and birthday cakes come from bakeries rather than risk a lopsided homemade version. One entrepreneur delayed launching a solid product for 2 years, rewriting code in search of error-free perfection while competitors passed him by. Performance psychologists note the dread feeds on all-or-nothing framing. To loosen its grip, people with automatomophobia sometimes schedule practice losses. They'll enter a low-stakes trivia night, knowing a wrong answer is inevitable, or deliberately cook a new recipe with no fallback takeout plan. Seeing that the world keeps spinning and friends still stick around after an imperfect showing helps the brain recast failure as data, not doom. Passing a cemetery at dusk, most people might feel a shiver of respect. For someone with necrophobia, the persistent fear of death or dead things, that quiet row of headstones can feel like a direct threat. Funeral processions, obituary pages, even a classroom skeleton model stir the stomach, and the faint smell of antiseptic in a hospital corridor can trigger instant retreat. The dread often takes root in a jolting first encounter. Viewing an open casket before understanding mortality, stumbling on a lifeless pet in yard, or watching breaking news footage that lingered too long on a tragedy scene. The brain fuses the sight of lifelessness with looming personal danger, so anything linked to death, Hearses, morgue scenes in TV dramas, even black crepe ribbons echoes that early shock. Daily life narrows to dodge reminders. Horror films are out, crime podcasts too vivid, and history museums with mummy exhibits require a hard pass. Road trips avoid scenic overlooks if memorial crosses dot the highway, and medical TV ads muted quickly in case side effect lists turn dark. Some necrophobes place live houseplants near mirrors to reinforce still-living imagery throughout the day. Thanatologists observe the fear hinges on proximity and tangibility. The closer the encounter, the sharper the spike. Because of that, people working to soften reactions sometimes start with indirect references, reading literary metaphors about death rather than factual accounts, or viewing stylized Day of the Dead artwork where skulls are painted bright and festive. Gradually absorbing symbolic versions lets the mind rehearse the concept in abstract form, easing it toward an eventual truce with life's most universal endpoint. A pasta dinner arrives, steam curling upward, and the sharp aroma of garlic stops one diner cold. For someone with allophobia, the fear of garlic, that pungent bulb reads more like a biohazard than a flavor boost. Thick cloves glistening in oil, the crunch of raw slices, even a cartoon vampire warded off by a garlic braid can spark a wave of revulsion or panic. Stories behind the fear differ. Some trace it to a childhood stomach bug blamed, fairly or not, on garlicky sauce. Others recall a strong waft hitting during morning sickness, locking scent to nausea for good. Cultural folklore steps in too. Tales of garlic as a shield against evil distort the bulb into something powerful enough to demand caution. Avoidance habits soon blossom. Menu scans linger on ingredient lists. Garlic bread warnings send appetizer orders pivoting. Social events featuring mezze or tapas earn polite declines. Grocery shopping means steering carts clear of produce bins stacked with papery white heads that flake and release odour at the slightest knock. One office worker keeps mouthwash handy at all times, worried a colleague's garlicky lunch might cling to shared air. Food psychologists note the aversion centres on sulphurous smell and lingering taste. Because of that, some people with allophobia observe how garlic behaves when transformed. Slow roasted until cloves turn sweet and mellow, sealed in foil, so scent stays contained. Watching others enjoy the altered version from a comfortable distance can help the brain reclassify at least some garlic encounters from overpowering threat to background note, trimming the edge off that once menacing aroma trail. A car merges onto the expressway, speedometer climbing, 60, 70, 80 kilometers per hour, and adrenaline floods someone with tachyphobia, the fear of speed. It doesn't matter that seatbelts click and airbags stand ready. The rush of scenery past the window feels like the world turning into a blur just before it spins out of control. The fear often anchors to a single velocity shock, a childhood coaster that dropped too steeply, a traffic accident replayed in slow motion, or a news segment showing crumpled metal after a high-speed chase. The brain stamps fast equals unsafe, so elevators that shoot upward or moving walkways in airports can trigger the same uneasy lurch. Daily life adapts by throttling down. Highway routes are replaced with frontage roads, exercise bikes stay on low resistance, and video games switch from racing titles to calm world-building sims. Friends planning ziplining or jet ski outings get a gentle catch you after. One commuter rises at dawn to drive near empty streets at a steady 40 kilometers per hour, arriving early but with steadier nerves. Traffic safety researchers note the anxiety centers on perceived reaction time, too little margin to correct if something goes wrong. Because of that, people coping with tachyphobia sometimes try controlled increments. Sitting in the passenger seat while a trusted driver accelerates only 5 kilometers per hour past their comfort point, then coasts. Repeating that tiny stretch under calm conditions can teach the body that a modest uptick in speed doesn't automatically flip the world upside down. Step onto a bathroom scale and feel the numbers creep upward. Ordinary feedback for most, but for someone with obesophobia, the fear of gaining weight. Each digit clicks like a countdown timer. Mirrors become inspection stations, restaurant menus minefields of hidden calories and birthday cake slices, invitations to silent dread rather than celebration. This fear often beds down in early comparisons. Maybe it began with school check-ins where weights were read aloud, or a doctor's offhand remark about watching the pounds. Add a culture that pairs worth with waistlines, before and after ads, comment sections praising drastic losses, and the brain files any weight change as looming disaster. Daily routines tighten into strict regimens. Food scales live on countertops, social events revolve around "I already ate," and workout apps ping relentlessly with streak reminders. Clothes shopping favours stretchy fabrics so fluctuations never show, and holidays revolve more around calorie math than shared meals. One office worker picks the staircase over elevators, not for cardio, but to avoid awkward scale readouts at annual health screenings. Nutritionists observe the fear hinges on control. Weight feels like a public metric that can betray private anxieties. For that reason, some people with obesophobia start by tracking non-scale victories, how many flights of stairs feel easier, or whether sleep improves after balanced dinners. Noting progress that isn't measured in kilos allows the brain to see health gains in broader strokes, gradually loosening the idea that every gram up equals ground lost. Syngenesophobia, the fear of relatives, puts family gatherings on the same stress level as dental surgery. Invitations to holiday dinners land with a thud, group chats mute for weeks. Even a caller ID flashing "Mom" can tighten shoulders. It isn't dislike so much as dread of history, expectations and unfiltered opinions converging under one roof. The anxiety often sprouts from tangled branches in the family tree. Childhood visits where gossip cut sharp, a cousin's wedding that dissolved into shouting, or relentless comparisons to higher-achieving siblings. Over time, blood ties shift from comfort blanket to tripwire. Anything could reignite old tensions. Daily logistics morph, vacation calendars conveniently clash with reunions, birthdays are acknowledged by text only, and social media circles exclude aunts prone to commentaries framed as advice. Some people relocate across time zones, finding the price of long-haul flights a worthwhile barrier to surprise drop-ins. Sociologists note the fear centers on roles that feel pre-assigned, labels like black sheep or golden child that seem impossible to retire. To lower the temperature, a few syngenesophobes experiment with neutral territory meetups, a public cafe where visits cap at one coffee, or outdoor markets that keep conversation moving. Short, agenda-light encounters let both sides interact without the claustrophobia of living rooms packed with shared history, gradually proving that family contact doesn't always equal emotional minefield. Putting on a sweater should feel like warmth. For someone with vestiphobia, the fear of clothing, the very act can feel like slipping into a trap. Fabrics press against skin like restraints, collars crowd the throat, and seams scratch even when tags are gone. A snug t-shirt hem may cue panic faster than a locked door. Triggers differ. Some trace the dread to childhood uniforms, stiff collars and itchy wool worn under threat of detention. Others point to a medical episode where emergency staff scissored clothes away, leaving the mind to link fabric with helplessness. Sensory processing quirks can add fuel. A single rough thread rubbed raw might teach the body that any garment could bite. Daily life rewrites itself around bare minimum layers. Soft, oversized hoodies replace fitted jackets. Shoes stay slip-on to skip laces. Formal events evoke strategic excuses. Laundry baskets fill with the same 3 outfits on rotation, and online meetings become a relief. No one knows if you're draped only in a blanket below the webcam. One commuter keeps a backup loose dress in a tote, ready to swap out if morning confidence falters mid-train ride. Occupational therapists note the fear centers on perceived confinement, not fashion. Because of that, some vestiphobes start desensitizing with weighted choice, laying a preferred fabric, say jersey knit, over an arm for 10 seconds, then lifting it off. The wearer controls the contact and duration, teaching the brain that fabric can touch without trapping, eventually expanding comfort from forearm to full sleeve. A selfie angle shifts slightly downward, and suddenly the camera fixes on the bottom of the face, chin, front, and center. For someone with geniophobia, the fear of chins, that simple image can feel grotesque, as though the jawline has morphed into an intrusive, alien feature. Conversation partners who rest a fist beneath their chin seem to spotlight it. Close-ups in films become instant skip points. The unease often starts with sharp childhood teasing, classmates tapping their own jaws and chanting "which chin," or relatives pinching cheeks while commenting on family resemblance. Cosmetic surgery ads showcasing before profiles do little to help. They frame any deviation from a magazine curve as flaw in need of fixing. The brain files chins under potential ridicule, so the mere outline can trigger a flush of embarrassment mixed with revulsion. Daily habits adapt quietly. Video calls frame the camera high, forcing viewers to see forehead rather than jaw. Fashion choices avoid turtlenecks that draw the eye downward, and holiday photos face swift cropping before anyone else can post them. Some geniophobes even prefer dimly lit restaurants where silhouettes blur and jawlines relax into shadow. Body image researchers observe that the fear targets a single feature, not the whole face. In exposure studies, participants sometimes begin by tracing chin shapes on paper, abstract lines without skin texture or personal identity. Seeing the form in neutral ink, detached from mirrors and comments, helps some reclassify the chin from social bullseye to just another contour on the human map. Imagine stepping outside and feeling as though danger hides in every corner. Traffic lights, passing dogs, even the rustle of leaves. That sweeping dread defines panophobia, the fear of everything. It isn't tied to one trigger. The anxiety roams from health scares to social mishaps to random cosmic events, shifting focus before any single worry can be pinned down. Often the feeling builds after a stretch of back-to-back stresses, job uncertainty, family illness, news cycles packed with catastrophes, until the mind stops distinguishing real threats from imagined ones. Hyper-alert becomes the default setting, checking headlines hourly, over-preparing for minor errands, scanning rooms for exit routes that will likely never be needed. Life contracts in quiet ways. To-do lists balloon with contingencies, vacation ideas stall at the planning stage, and spontaneous invites earn reflexive maybe-later replies. One panophobic teacher keeps 3 phone chargers in her bag, convinced a dead battery could spiral into disaster, though she's never faced such a crisis before. Psychologists describe the phobia as fear's volume knob stuck on max. Because pinpointing a single culprit is impossible, some people find relief in grounding triads. When anxiety spikes, they name 3 things they can see, 3 they can touch, and 3 they can hear. The exercise anchors awareness in the immediate environment, proving, at least for that moment, the world isn't broadcasting an all-channels alarm. Stroll past a suburban lawn at dusk, and a painted grin peers from the flowerbed, pointed hat, frozen smile, marble eyes that never blink. For someone with nomophobia, the fear of garden gnomes, that kitschy statue feels less like whimsy and more like an ambush waiting for nightfall. The rigid posture and ever-watchful gaze spark the same nerves that motion-activated security lights aim to calm. Origins vary. Some point to childhood tales where gnomes come alive after dark, rearranging toys or whispering mischief. Others recall horror movie trailers that turned harmless yard ornaments into tiny stalkers with pickaxes. Add prank videos where friends reposition gnomes closer to bedroom windows, and the mind files the figurines under objects that might move when you're not looking. Everyday detours soon follow. Home goods aisles displaying ceramic dwarfs get bypassed, botanical garden paths risk sudden U-turns, and holiday gift exchanges inspire gentle reminders. Please, no yard decor. One homeowner planted shrubs tall enough to hide neighbours' statuary from view, pruning them only after the cheerful faces were safely out of sight. Collectors note gnomes often share human features minus motion, an uncanny valley twist. Because of that, people easing the reaction sometimes start with abstract versions, minimalist silhouettes or flat wooden cutouts lacking detailed faces. Seeing the simplified shape stay perfectly still helps the brain tag it as inert decor rather than lurking sentinel, trimming the edge off future encounters with the full, rosy-cheeked originals. She scrolls through messages, thumb hovering over send. It's just a coffee invite, but to someone with pistonthrophobia, the fear of trusting others, tapping that arrow feels riskier than cliff diving. Promises echo like IOUs written on tissue paper. Compliments carry invisible strings. The mind replays earlier chapters, secrets leaked, confidences used as currency, a heartfelt gift ghosted hours later. This wariness rarely appears overnight. It tends to layer. A childhood friend blabs a diary entry. A first love exposes private photos in revenge. A business partner siphons funds. Each breach writes a new cautionary clause until trust seems less virtue, more liability. Daily life slides into self-containment. Chats stick to logistics, not feelings. Group projects, tasks delegated through spreadsheets, never verbal handshakes. Social media timelines show landscapes and pets, no personal milestones that could weaponize vulnerability. One pistonthrophobic architect stores design drafts offline, convinced cloud folders invite prying eyes before the concept is solid. Relationship researchers say the fear centers on control. Holding cards close feels safer than risking the shuffle. People working to soften that reflex sometimes watch for micro-contracts already honored, colleagues who keep meeting times, friends who text back when they say they will. Noticing those small, fulfilled agreements reframes trust from leap to step, suggesting that handing over a single card needn't expose the whole deck. Open mic night at the cafe. Someone steps up, clears their throat, and begins reciting verse. For most listeners, it's an artsy interlude. For someone with metrophobia, the fear of poetry, every rhymed line lands like fingernails on a chalkboard. The unpredictable rhythms, layered metaphors, and sudden emotional pivots feel disorienting, almost accusatory, as if each stanza hides a riddle they're obliged to solve on the spot. Many trace the discomfort to school days, being asked to find the hidden meaning of an obscure poem under harsh fluorescent lights, then told their interpretation was wrong. Others recall funerals where solemn verses deepened grief, sealing poetry to sorrow. Over time, any talk of I ams or enjambment signals a looming pop quiz on feelings. The phobia shapes social choices. Literary podcasts and Instagram quote pages get muted. Bookstore aisles with slim chapbooks are bypassed, and wedding ceremonies featuring handwritten vows invite gentle excuses. One marketing professional even filters ad copy to avoid taglines that rhyme, worried a client might slip into jingle territory. Literary therapists note the tension revolves around ambiguity. Poems rarely say exactly what they mean. Because of this, some metrophobes start with plain speech verse, short observational poems that read like diary entries, zero metaphors attached. Seeing language stay literal under the banner of poetry can show the brain that not all verses demand decoding, easing the reflex to brace whenever a stanza appears. A phone buzzes, no name on the screen, just an automated reminder. For someone with automatomophobia, the fear of being forgotten or ignored, that silence from friends feels like the start of erasure. Social feeds scroll past without tags, group chats meet up without pinging, and every unread message timer tallies minutes of imagined irrelevance. The worry often germinates in abrupt disconnects. Childhood pals moving away without goodbye, a long-distance partner who gradually stopped replying, or family gatherings where stories got repeated because no one recalled who'd already heard them. Each lapse writes a new equation in the mind. Absence equals amnesia equals I no longer exist. Life rearranges to fend off invisibility. Calendars bristle with check-ins, selfies go up daily to maintain algorithm presence, and thank you notes stretch into detailed updates, proof of continued existence. Some keep souvenirs visible in communal spaces, a mug at the office sink, a jacket on a shared coat rack, as physical bookmarks saying, "Someone sits here." Social psychologists note the fear fixates on memory tokens, evidence that ties stay strong. Because of this, people wrestling with mageirocophobia sometimes notice micro-recognitions: a barista who recalls their order, a colleague who forwards a meme that suits their humour. Logging those small acknowledgements can highlight how often everyday life quietly confirms you're still on someone's radar, countering the narrative that disappearance is just one unanswered text away. Kakorrhaphiophobia, the fear of sitting down, turns chairs into silent provocateurs. A theatre seat, a dentist's recliner, even a park bench seems poised to trap rather than rest. Knees hover midway before the mind flashes images of being unable to rise, legs cramping, circulation cutting off, or worse, appearing lazy and exposed. Many recall the spark: a childhood prank where a friend yanked a chair away, a strict classroom where students were ordered "sit still or else," or a medical scare involving blood clots after a long flight. The body remembers tension pooled in thighs while waiting for permission to stand, filing "sitting under loss of control." Workarounds shape daily life. Standing desks become non-negotiable. Cafes with only stools get skipped, and long meetings are attended from the room's edge, shifting weight from foot to foot. One commuter rides 2 subway stops past her office just to keep moving, then walks back rather than take the crowded line with limited standing space. Ergonomists note the unease ties to immobilization, not furniture itself. Because of that, some people with Kakorrhaphiophobia start with dynamic perches: tall drafting stools that allow feet to stay planted while the torso rests briefly. Experiencing a seated position that still offers quick escape can help recast sitting from hostage situation to fleeting pause, another stance among many, instead of a lock on the limbs. Imagine reaching to shake someone's hand and feeling an involuntary shudder at the last second. That response defines chirophobia, the fear of hands. It can focus on one's own hands, other people's, or both. Fingers appear too jointed, too flexible. Palms seem like maps of germs and hidden intentions. Even watching a pianist glide across keys can spark discomfort, so many moving parts in close choreography. The anxiety often traces to tactile betrayals: a childhood burn on a stove coil that seared fingerprints, a memory of slick latex gloves during a tense medical exam, or hyper-focused lessons about bacteria lurking under nails. Horror films that zoom in on claw-like grasps don't help. They cement the idea that hands can morph from tools to threats. Daily life adopts subtle detours. Gloves become year-round accessories, handshakes convert to polite nods, and group photos crop just below the wrist. Touch-screen kiosks earn a stylus tap instead of skin contact, and crafting hobbies shift to voice-controlled tech over pottery or knitting. All that clay and yarn threading between fingers feels unsettlingly intimate. Occupational therapists note the fear concentrates on detail: creases, movement, potential contamination. Exposure often starts with abstraction, tracing simple outlines of hands on paper, or viewing X-ray images where bones, not skin and nails, dominate. Observing the structure in simplified form lets the brain register hands as mechanical frameworks, useful levers rather than unpredictable creatures, gently softening the reflexive flinch when real fingers enter view. Traffic light turns green, the car lurches forward, and someone with automatomophobia, the fear of riding in vehicles, feels their stomach drop like the first plunge of a roller coaster. It's not just speed, it's the idea of surrendering control to an engine, a driver, a river of steel flowing in every lane. Many trace the fear back to one jarring instant: a childhood fender bender viewed from a back seat too small to brace, a news clip showing twisted wreckage replayed on loop, or motion sickness so violent it etched nausea onto every future ride. The brain stitches car to helpless, so even buckling a seatbelt can cue a surge of adrenaline instead of calm. Daily life detours accordingly. Commutes trade highways for bicycle paths, vacations favour train routes where walking aisles feel less confining, and ride-shares earn polite declines. "I'll meet you there" often means a long, steady walk. One graduate student chose campus housing specifically to keep every essential errand within sneaker distance. Transportation therapists observe the dread focuses on perceived agency, sitting strapped while tons of metal make decisions at 100 kilometers per hour. Because of that, some people start easing the reflex in parked cars. They'll adjust mirrors, turn the steering wheel, feel the pedals, proving the cabin isn't a cage. Later, they might ride shotgun around a quiet block with a trusted friend, windows down, at a crawl. Each uneventful circuit helps refile vehicle from runaway box to controllable space, one gentle lap at a time. Wind isn't empty. It hums, tugs, slams doors, rattles nerves. For people with anemophobia, the fear of wind or drafts, a sudden gust feels less like fresh air and more like an invisible force prying at windows and unravelling control. Tree branches sway, gutters whistle, and every whoosh sounds one step from a gale that might rip roofs away. The unease often germinates after a specific blow, a hurricane warning that sent families to basements, a camping trip where a sudden squall tore tents, or childhood stories linking colds to open windows at night. Once moving air equates to damage or illness, even a gentle fan can raise goosebumps. Daily adjustments mount. Weather apps refresh hourly for wind speed updates, cafe seats far from doorways earn top priority, and ceiling fans remain unused even in sweltering heat. Some city dwellers plot walking routes through sheltered alleyways, avoiding riverfront promenades notorious for brisk breezes. One homeowner seals mail slots and keyholes with felt strips, determined to keep drafts and anxiety out. Meteorologists note that most urban winds stay well below hazard levels, but facts rarely sway instinct. To soften the instinctive flinch, people with animatrophobia sometimes begin with controlled airflow, sitting in a parked car while the vent blows on its lowest setting, or standing a few feet from a hairdryer aimed past, not at, the body. Short exposures under clear control help the mind re-tag wind from hostile invasion to manageable passing element. Gravity is constant, silent, and for most, invisible. Yet for someone with barophobia, the fear of gravity itself, or changes in gravitational force, every elevator ride, airplane takeoff, or sudden drop on a roller coaster video feels like courting a force they can't outrun. Some fear being crushed if gravity somehow increases. Others imagine floating helplessly skyward should it ever switch off. Origins vary. A childhood free-fall ride that left legs jelly weak, a nightmare about drifting into space, or watching documentaries on black hole spaghettification can spark a fixation on gravity's power. News clips of zero-G astronauts tumbling inside the ISS sometimes add fuel, proof that the familiar tug we rely on isn't guaranteed everywhere. Daily life tilts to avoid reminders. High floors in buildings are skipped for ground-level apartments. Flight invitations earn polite refusals. Even standing on a ladder to change a light bulb feels like tempting fate. Some barophobes steer clear of science museums with drop tower exhibits or planetarium shows describing weightless moonscapes. Physicists note gravity hasn't faltered once in Earth's 4.5 billion years, reassuring, but facts struggle against visceral dread. People working to ease barophobia sometimes start with microdrops, sitting, then rising on a stability ball or gentle trampoline where vertical motion is tiny and controlled. Observing that the pull remains steady and entirely survivable helps the brain file gravity as a constant companion rather than an unpredictable foe. Metathesiophobia, the fear of change, turns life's natural ebb and flow into a minefield. A department reshuffle, a new phone interface, even a favourite cafe swapping its mug design can feel like the ground shifting underfoot. Instead of excitement, each update stirs a knot of uncertainty. What hidden domino will this topple next? The worry often anchors to past turbulence, a sudden move that upended friendships, a company merger that cut positions overnight, or a breakup that rearranged daily routines in a single conversation. The brain records upheaval as ambush, so any deviation from the familiar roadmap cues a preemptive brace. Daily habits calcify into placeholders of certainty. Menus stay the same week after week. Software updates click, remind me later indefinitely, and wardrobe rotations stick to tried-and-true colours. One office worker prints all documents, digitally updated or not, clinging to paper versions that can't morph without permission. Organisational psychologists note the fear isn't about novelty itself, but the loss of predictability. Because of that, people easing metathesiophobia sometimes schedule controlled swaps, rearranging just 2 desktop icons or taking a new route home once a month. Small, deliberate tweaks show that not every change spirals into chaos. Sometimes it simply refreshes the view. A blank sheet slides from the printer, clean, weightless, harmless to most. Yet for someone with papyrophobia, the fear of paper, the crisp rustle feels like static warning of cuts, germs, or ink-stained mistakes waiting to happen. Pages fluttering in a binder resemble fluttering wings. Even receipts jammed into a wallet stir unease. Origins vary widely. Some recall a childhood paper cut that refused to heal, each bump reopening the sting. Others point to school days spent under red pen scrutiny, test papers handed back like verdicts, margins bleeding corrections. Archivists mention stories of mouldy, musty stacks in basements where old documents smelled of rot, melding paper with hidden biohazards. Daily life adapts in subtle contortions. Digital signatures replace hard copies, restaurant menus trigger quick smartphone scans, and physical books give way to e-readers where pages slide without fibres. Office workers with papyrophobia often volunteer for presentation duties, anything to stay near screens instead of filing cabinets. One graphic designer keeps cotton gloves handy for necessary print proofs, tossing them after a single use. Occupational therapists note the fear centres on tactile contact and potential mess. Because of that, some people begin with laminated sheets, paper sealed in plastic, edges smooth, no chance of tearing. Handling notes through that barrier shows the brain that information can still pass hands without the dreaded hiss of raw paper. Gradually, trimming the lamination to expose small margins helps reintroduce the feel of fibres, easing the edge off what once felt like the thinnest, sharpest threat. Hippopotomonstrosi In the grand carnival of human anxieties, few fears are as deliciously ironic as hippopotomonstrosi, the dread of long words. Yes, the very label terrifies the sufferers it describes, a cruel linguistic joke stretching 35 letters. Coined by a mischievous American psychologist in the 1960s, the term deliberately stitches together hippopotamus, monster, and the Latin for very long to create a lexical beast as cumbersome as its meaning. Clinically, it sits among specific phobias, yet its triggers are often social. Classrooms where spelling bee prodigies flex, boardrooms bristling with jargon, even prescription leaflets packed with polysyllabic chemistry. Consider this: the 45-letter Titan numen-ultra-microscopic silicovolcanoconiosis, invented in 1935 as a curiosity, still haunts medical dictionaries and spelling bee nightmares alike. Even longer is the chemical name for the protein titin, ballooning to more than 189,000 letters, so colossal it would take 3.5 hours just to pronounce. For someone with hippopotomonstrosi, such lexical leviathans are not trivia, but terror, shadows that lengthen with every syllable. The anxiety isn't comedy to the person experiencing it. Sweaty palms, racing pulse, a panicked hunt for simpler synonyms. These are genuine fight-or-flight reactions triggered by nothing more than letters marching in marathon formation. Some patients scan paragraphs the way a minesweeper scans a beach, eyes darting for hidden landmines like electroencephalographically. Cognitive behavior therapists sometimes weaponize the absurdity, asking clients to rehearse outrageously long words until repetition drains them of menace. Yet the phobia exposes a universal truth. Language is power, and oversized words can feel like gatekeepers guarding ivory towers. Strip them away, and ideas suddenly feel welcoming, democratic, yours. That thought alone can begin to loosen the phobia's grip. Picture a lazy walk through a city park, breeze in the trees, kids tossing breadcrumbs, gentle quacking drifting across the pond, yet every glossy, emerald-headed silhouette feels aimed straight at you. Anatidophobia is the unsettling conviction that somewhere, somehow, a duck is watching. The word hatched from a 1988 Far Side cartoon, but it stuck because it captures a genuine pattern, the mind's talent for conjuring silent observers. Swap stalkers or CCTV cameras for a lone mallard, and the anxiety is suddenly absurd, but no less intense. Sufferers describe a prickle at the nape when they pass decorative fountains, shun children's books starring friendly drakes, and scan cafe patios for beady orange-rimmed eyes. One woman in Ontario rerouted her daily commute to avoid a billboard featuring Aflac's jumbo duck mascot. The oversized grin felt predatory. Clinicians note overlaps with scopophobia, fear of being watched, and ornithophobia, fear of birds. Yet anatidophobia's razor-thin focus delivers a surreal twist. It isn't wings or beaks that terrify, only the imagined unwavering gaze. Evolution offers a clue. For millennia, survival hinged on noticing predators in peripheral vision. A bobbing head in the reeds could mean danger. Misfire that circuitry today, and a docile mallard morphs into a feathered voyeur. Left unchecked, the phobia can snowball into avoidance. Lakeside vacations cancelled, picnics abandoned, playgrounds bypassed, lest bread-throwing toddlers summon them. Therapy often blends exposure with humour. Clients start by naming cartoon ducks aloud. Donald, Daffy, graduating to rubber bath toys, then finally sharing a bench beside a live flock while narrating their thoughts. When the birds shrink from ominous sentinels back to harmless quackers, the phobia's grip loosens. The gaze remains, but its teeth are gone. Ever take a big bite of a peanut butter sandwich and feel the sticky paste clinging to the roof of your mouth? For most people, it's a minor hassle. They grab a swig of milk and move on. For someone with automatomophobia, that glue-like moment triggers full panic. The term first appeared in a 1940s comic strip, yet the fear it describes is very real. One childhood choke, one coughing fit at lunch, and the brain starts labelling peanut butter as a silent suffocation trap. Sufferers go to great lengths to dodge the danger. They toast bread until it's nearly crunchy, believing hard surfaces keep the spread from sinking in. They thin nut butter with water or honey, or avoid it entirely by switching to jam-only sandwiches. One college student even wore latex gloves when making snacks for friends. No chance of the stuff touching her skin. Why does the fear stick so firmly? Peanut butter is oily and thick, so saliva can't break it down fast. That extra second of cling tells the brain, airway blocked, sound the alarm. Heart pounds, throat tightens, and every chew feels like quicksand. The cycle repeats until the mouth is clear, proving the brain right and locking the fear in deeper. Therapists tackle it bit by bit. They might start with a tiny taste on a toothpick while practicing slow, deep breaths, Over days or weeks the amount grows, a thin smear on toast, half a spoonful, finally a normal sandwich. Each calm swallow rewrites the body's message. Sticky doesn't mean suffocating, and a sip of water will always free you. Imagine opening a dictionary and finding words that loop back on themselves like a verbal boomerang. Madam, kayak, level, race car. They're called palindromes, spelled the same forward and backward, and for most people they're a neat party trick. But for someone with abephobia, these mirror words spark real unease. The term itself is a joke. It's a palindrome that means fear of palindromes. Yet behind the humour is a genuine anxiety tied to patterns that refuse to behave the normal way. Psychologists think the fear starts with a sense of trapped symmetry. Language usually moves in one direction, left to right, like a river flowing downstream. Palindromes turn that river into a whirlpool. Every letter you read pulls you back the other way. For a mind that craves order, that loop can feel like being stuck on an endless traffic roundabout with no exit. Some sufferers report a tightness in the chest, a sudden spike in heart rate, or even a need to shut a book the instant they spot one of these words. Daily life offers more traps than you'd expect. Computer programmers bump into palindromic code strings, math students face number palindromes like 12,321, even casual texting can ambush you with wow or LOL. One college student edited every level in her notes to tier so she could study without anxiety. Another avoided digital clocks at 12:21 or 21:12, worried the numbers would lodge in his mind and loop all day. Treatment mirrors other specific phobias, slow exposure paired with gentle humour. A therapist might begin with short palindromes, Ada, pop, spoken aloud in a calm tone, then work up to longer phrases like Abel was I, ere I saw Elba. The goal is simple. Prove that the brain can notice the loop without spiralling itself. For most of us, buttons are background noise, tiny discs that hold shirts together. For someone with kumpunophobia, they're landmines. The sight, touch, or even thought of a plastic button can spark sweating palms, racing pulse, and an urgent need to escape. Some sufferers pay extra for zip-up clothes, slice buttons off new jackets, or avoid laundries because the click-clack of the machines reminds them of a bowl full of loose fasteners. The fear often starts in childhood. A toddler who once choked on a loose button or tasted the bitter chemical coating on cheap plastics files the experience under danger. Others blame texture. The cool, bumpy circle feels alien against sensitive skin. One woman recalled her teacher's habit of tapping a blazer button while scolding students. Years later, any button that shape triggered the memory. Kumpunophobia complicates daily life in surprising ways. Job interviews become stressful because formal shirts are covered in triggers. Parents struggle when children's toys come with button eyes. Animated films like Coraline can set off a panic spiral. Dating apps pose another hurdle. Profile photos featuring crisp button-downs are swiped past instantly, shrinking social options and reinforcing isolation. Therapy focuses on gradual contact. Clients might start by looking at photos, then handle smooth wooden discs before finally sewing a single button onto scrap fabric. Alongside exposure, cognitive exercises reframe the object. A button isn't dirty or dangerous. It's a neutral piece of moulded resin. Some people swap fear for control by learning to craft their own buttons from clay, turning the trigger into art. Yellow is the colour of sunshine, rubber ducks and school bus paint, but for someone with xanthophobia, that bright hue feels more like a warning siren. The fear can focus on anything yellow, flowers, post-it notes, even cartoon emojis. One office worker covered the glowing mute button on her headset with black tape so the flash of yellow wouldn't spike her heart rate. Another commuter switched to night shift taxis because daytime cabs in his city were a sea of canary yellow metal. Where does it start? Sometimes with a single bad memory, a childhood wasp sting beside a yellow slide, or a hospital visit in a lemon-coloured room. The brain links the shade to pain or danger, then paints the whole world with that alarm. Biology adds fuel. Yellow is hardwired as a signal in nature. Think poison dart frogs and bright mushrooms, so a cautious mind may dial the alert volume up to max. Avoidance gets complicated fast. Bananas, traffic lights, and condiment bottles are everywhere. Many sufferers wear tinted glasses or keep apps in dark mode so icons don't glow gold. Wedding invites printed on cream paper can trigger a hard no, and some xanthophobes refuse vaccines because the syringe plunger has a tiny yellow stripe. Everyday life turns into a scavenger hunt for the safest colour palette. Therapists often use graded exposure. A session might start with pastel yellow sticky notes taped across a wall. Once breathing stays calm, they move to a sunflower photo, then maybe a bowl of bright lemons on the table. Each calm encounter tells the nervous system, yellow is just a colour, not a threat. Over time, the brain stops sounding its false alarm. But what if the threat isn't colour, but the simplest household item, an ordinary length of string? String seems harmless, soft, flexible, even comforting when tied in a neat bow. But for people with linophobia, a shoelace or a coil of kitchen twine can feel like a snake ready to strike. The fear often begins with childhood tangles, hair caught in a brush, a kite line wrapped too tightly around a wrist, or the nightmare of a finger turning purple beneath a too tight friendship bracelet. The brain records the helpless sensation of being bound and later flashes that memory whenever a loose thread dangles nearby. Daily life quickly turns tricky. Choosing clothes means skipping hoodies with draw cords, and sewing kits are strictly off-limits. One college student refused to open store-bought bread because the plastic tie tensed her shoulders. Another sent gifts unwrapped to avoid ribbon. The phobia even bleeds into digital spaces. Emoji of yarn balls can trigger a scroll-past reflex. Why does string provoke such a strong response? Psychologists point to the fear of entrapment. A single strand is easy to snap, yet it symbolizes restraint, shoelaces tied together, wrists bound, the slow tightening of a tourniquet. The mind exaggerates that threat until even a loose tassel becomes a trap in waiting. Sensory factors amplify it. Many linophobes describe a crawl on their skin when they see frayed fibres, as though tiny threads might slide under the flesh. Treatment pairs gradual touch with mental reframing. Clients might begin by observing string through a glass jar, progress to tracing a smooth cord with one finger, then practice tying and untying simple knots while breathing slowly. Therapists often add humour. Making silly string art shapes turns the threat into a playful object. Each safe interaction rewrites the body's script. String bends, it doesn't bite, and you're always free to let go. Vegetables can be squeaky, slimy, or fibrous. A childhood choke on a stringy green bean can brand every future veggie as a hidden hazard. Colour can matter too. Vivid greens and purples signal unknown to picky young brains already wired for caution against bitter, potentially toxic plants. Social pressure adds fuel. Constant battles at the dinner table teach the mind to link vegetables with stress and conflict until a single pea rolling across a plate triggers a surge of adrenaline. The fallout is bigger than skipped salads. Lycanophobes struggle with restaurant menus, family gatherings, even dating. Imagine explaining your panic when a partner orders a side of roasted Brussels sprouts. Nutrition takes a hit. Many rely on processed foods, leading to fatigue and health worries that reinforce the anxiety loop. Therapy starts tiny, literally. Clients might first hold a photo of a vegetable, then a baby carrot sealed in plastic. Next step, touching a peeled cucumber slice while practicing slow breathing. Eventually, they taste a micro-dice of zucchini mixed into a familiar sauce. Each safe bite chips away at the brain's vegetables equals threat equation. Some turn exposure into adventure, ranking veggies on a tolerable to tasty scale to gamify progress. Creamy brie, bubbling pizza, late-night mac and cheese. Foods many people crave can feel like biohazards to someone with turophobia, the fear of cheese. The reaction isn't simple disgust, it's full-blown anxiety. A single whiff of cheddar can send hearts racing, palms sweating, and legs carrying the sufferer out of the room before their mind even catches up. Origins vary. Some trace it to a childhood incident, maybe a mold-flecked slice found at the back of the fridge, or a bout of food poisoning after a dodgy grilled cheese. Others point to texture and smell. Cheese can be rubbery, crumbly, or gooey. Its aromas range from nutty to downright barnyard. For a sensitive nose, those scents read as decay, tripping the brain's ancient "don't eat spoiled food" alarm. Pop culture doesn't help. Cartoons show cheese crawling with cartoon mice or sprouting green fuzz, cementing the idea that it's alive in the worst way. Avoidance tactics get creative. Some people memorize menu codes so they can scan for hidden dairy, 4 cheese, Alfredo, au gratin, before panic sets in. Others carry sealed utensils to holiday dinners so rogue shavings of parmesan won't touch their forks. One office worker scheduled lunch breaks at 10 a.m. to dodge co-workers microwaving leftover lasagna. Just the steam billowing from the kitchenette door made his throat tighten. Therapy focuses on 2 fronts. First, break the rotting association by starting with fresh, mild cheeses like mozzarella, which hardly smells. Clients smell it, touch it, maybe stretch a tiny piece between fingers while breathing steadily. Second, they reframe mold as controlled science, harmless penicillium cultures chosen by experts. Watching a cheesemaker inoculate blue cheese under sterile conditions can flip disgust into fascination. Over time, the brain learns that cheese isn't a lurking pathogen, but a carefully engineered food. Knees are marvels of engineering, hinges that let us sprint, squat, and dance. Yet for people with geniophobia, they're more like horror props. The simple sight of a bare kneecap can trigger a pounding heart, sweaty palms, even nausea. Some sufferers recoil from their own legs, wearing pants year-round, no matter the heat. Others dread television ads for athletic gear, ready to mute the screen before a slow-motion bend zooms in. Where does the fear come from? Many trace it to a childhood injury, a bloody playground scrape or a cracked patella after a bad skateboard landing. The brain stores the image of torn skin and exposed bone, then rings the alarm whenever a knee appears. Another group blames vulnerability. Knees are oddly fragile, one wrong twist and you're down, so for an anxious mind they symbolize sudden loss of control. Even the way kneecaps slide sideways when we flex can look uncanny, almost alien under thin skin. Daily life becomes a maze of avoidance. Gym class? Excused note. Summer pool parties. Sorry, can't make it. Tight clothing that outlines leg joints is off limits, and medical shows are skipped in case a surgery scene features that telltale incision over the joint. One university student sat only in back rows so she wouldn't glimpse classmates in shorts crossing their legs. Treatment blends exposure with body awareness. Therapists might start with cartoon drawings of stick figure knees, then move to photos, then short video clips. Clients practice calming breaths while gently touching the area around their own kneecaps, learning that the joint is sturdy, not ticking. Some pair therapy with strength training. Feeling muscles stabilize the knee can replace dread with confidence. Visualization helps too. Picturing the knee's internal gears working smoothly whenever anxiety rises. A full beard can signal wisdom, rugged style, or trend-setting hipster flair, but for someone with pogonophobia, it raises instant alarms. The fear focuses on beards of any shape, tidy goatees, bushy lumberjack growth, even the faint shadow of stubble. Symptoms mirror other specific phobias: heart racing, throat tightening, a reflex step backward the moment facial hair enters the frame. Some sufferers avoid handshake lines at conferences because the brush of whiskers during a cheek-kiss greeting sends their pulse skyrocketing. How does it start? Many pogonophobes trace the panic to a single childhood encounter. A scratchy kiss from an uncle with coffee-scented whiskers, a hospital visit where a doctor's beard hid his mouth and muffled bad news, or a Santa impersonator whose itchy fake beard shed nylon fibers into wide, frightened eyes. For others, the dread grows from hygiene worries. Beards are rumoured, often unfairly, to trap food crumbs, germs, and mystery odours. A 2014 tabloid article claiming beards are as dirty as toilets still circulates online, reinforcing the association. Avoidance strategies shape daily habits. Job seekers scan team photos on company websites. Too many beards can sway them away from applying. Dating app profiles with winter scruff get an instant left swipe. One teacher rearranged her classroom seats so the bearded parents at parent-teacher night sat farthest from her desk. Another commuter memorized which subway cars a heavily bearded busker favored and chose different doors. Therapy tackles two angles: perception and proximity. Clients watch time-lapse videos of a clean-shaven face growing gradual stubble, pausing to note that nothing scary happens as the hair lengthens. Next, they handle brand-new beard combs, clean, scent-free, to retrain their sense of cleanliness. Eventually, they practice short, scripted conversations with a bearded friend, focusing on eye contact instead of the hair halo. A hot shower is most people's quick route to feeling refreshed, but for someone with aulophobia, the fear of bathing or washing, stepping under running water can feel like stepping onto a ledge. The anxiety shows up in two main ways. First is sensory overload. Water pounds the skin, soap stings the eyes, and steam fills every breath, making the bathroom feel more like a fog-filled cave than a spa. Second is loss of control. Slipping on wet tiles, drowning under the spray, or watching water swirl away down a drain can all trigger racing thoughts. Many people trace the phobia back to childhood mishaps: slipping in a tub, getting shampoo in the eyes, or being startled by a sudden blast of cold during a haircut wash. The brain pairs those sharp memories with the bathroom itself, so even the smell of fresh towels can raise heart rates. Over time, avoidance sets in. Quick wipe-downs replace showers, dry shampoo stands in for the real deal, and social invitations start to fade because the fear of smelling off fuels its own loop of worry and shame. Daily life quickly becomes a juggling act. A college student might set alarms at 3 a.m. to wash when roommates are asleep, reducing the pressure of being caught. A working parent could plan gym workouts on Friday nights only, timing sweat sessions so they line up with the once-a-week shower they can tolerate. Dermatologists see side effects: dry skin from harsh sanitizing wipes, infections from incomplete rinsing, and anxiety spikes whenever a doctor mentions hygienic routines. Treatment usually starts with graded exposure. First, sitting fully clothed on the edge of an empty tub while practicing slow breathing, then running water over one hand, and eventually taking a brief, lukewarm rinse with lights dimmed and favourite music playing. Success grows as the brain learns that each controlled wash ends safely, with no slip, No suffocation, just relief. Most people barely notice their own belly button, but for someone with aulophobia, the fear of naval contact or exposure, even a playful poke can feel like a stab at an open wound. The anxiety hits fast. First comes a jolt of queasy vulnerability. That tiny scar suddenly seems paper thin, one touch away from tearing. Next arrives the mental image of something spilling out, a leftover nightmare from childhood tales about loose umbilical knots. Many sufferers trace the fear to a single moment: a doctor's cold stethoscope pressed too hard, an older sibling's prank pinch, or a graphic diagram showing how the cord once fed them in the womb. The brain files the spot under fragile, and everyday cues, from crop-top ads to lint-cleaning videos, reactivate the alarm. Avoidance shapes wardrobes and routines. High-waisted jeans stay zipped year-round. Swimsuits are strictly one piece. Partners learn the midriff is a no-touch zone. Some pregnant women postpone ultrasounds because the gel crosses that forbidden circle. A yoga student I interviewed skipped every pose that stretched the abdomen, convinced her navel might pop. Why does the fear stick? Evolution primes us to protect soft openings: eyes, ears, throat. An anxious mind simply adds the navel to that short list. A common coping step is distance exposure. Start by looking at belly button images while practicing slow breathing, then press a palm over the area through thick fabric, gradually lowering the barrier. Each calm repetition teaches the nervous system a new rule. Nothing spills, nothing tears. The body stays perfectly whole. For most people, music at a party is an invitation. For someone with Kakorrhaphiophobia, the fear of dancing, it's a warning siren. The first wave of anxiety feels like spotlight heat. Knees lock, shoulders tense, and even a rhythmic foot tap seems risky, as if any sudden move might trigger public ridicule. The fear often begins in adolescence. A disastrous school disco, a relative teasing clumsy steps at a wedding, or a gym teacher barking, "You've got no rhythm," can brand dancing as humiliation. Sometimes it's tied to body image worries, fear of wobbling flesh, squeaking shoes, or simply taking up space on the floor. Avoidance strategies are elaborate. Invites to clubs or Zumba classes earn polite excuses. Friends' first dance videos at weddings get skipped on social media. One office worker times bathroom breaks whenever colleagues plan a TikTok routine, avoiding the break room entirely until the music stops. Another chooses restaurants over bars for nights out, confident that tables beat dance floors. Why does Kakorrhaphobia stick? Movement is inherently vulnerable. You surrender balance, expose posture, and risk stepping off the socially acceptable beat. The brain packages all that into a single danger signal whenever baselines thump. Therapists counter with micro-exposures, swaying gently at home for 30 seconds, then adding arm movements, then copying simple YouTube tutorials in private. Each short, safe session rewrites the message. Motion isn't mockery. It's just another way the body can be free. For most people, bedtime is a welcome slide into rest. For someone with somnophobia, the fear of falling asleep, the moment the lights go out feels like stepping into an abyss. Anxiety hits in two waves. First comes dread of losing control. What if my heart stops, or I'm trapped in a nightmare? Then there's the fear of vulnerability, being unable to protect loved ones or hear a creaking floorboard once the world fades. The panic often traces back to one rough stretch of nights. Maybe a sleep paralysis episode where a shadow figure pinned the body, or hearing about someone who didn't wake up after dozing off. The brain stitches those memories to the very act of drifting away, so even an innocent yawn can trigger a shot of adrenaline. Daily life warps to dodge the pillow, phones glow past 3 a.m, energy drink cans stack high, and work meetings blur into fog. One friend keeps a movie playing all night. background chatter feels like a handhold to consciousness. Another sets hourly alarms, trading deep rest for jittery catnaps that barely count. Why is the fear so sticky? Humans like being in charge. Surrendering that control, even for sleep, spooks an anxious mind. A low-pressure trick some people swear by is the 5-minute float. Lie down, close your eyes, and remind yourself you're just resting, free to sit up any time. Most end up staying put longer than expected, proving to their own brains that dozing off isn't a trap. Repeat it enough times, and the edge of the abyss starts to look more like a soft landing pad. Most people greet morning light by opening their eyes. For someone with autophobia, the fear of opening one's eyes, even a sliver of daylight can feel like staring straight into danger. The first surge of anxiety says, keep them shut. Something awful might be waiting. A second wave warns that bright light itself could burn, blind, or reveal sights too disturbing to handle. The fear often traces back to a sharp childhood memory, waking to a nightmare scene on TV, seeing a parent's injury in the middle of the night, or blinding pain from an eye exam's glare. The brain tags eyes open as a trigger, so daylight, overhead bulbs, or even a partner switching on a bedside lamp can trip the alarm. Life narrows fast. Curtains stay drawn all day, sunglasses become indoor gear, reading happens through half lids or pinhole masks. One student chose online classes because walking across campus meant bright hallways. Another memorized the layout of her apartment so she could shuffle around in near darkness, proud of bump-free navigation but exhausted from the constant squint. Why does it cling? Our eyes are vital. Scratch a cornea once and you realize how fragile sight feels. The anxious mind magnifies that vulnerability until it labels any exposure as threat. A gentle experiment some folks like starts with a dim room. Close eyes, count to 5, open just a crack, then shut them again. Repeat until the crack feels ordinary. The goal isn't a sun-drenched stroll tomorrow, it's persuading the brain that even a cautious peek can be perfectly safe. Nomophobia, the fear of being without mobile phone access, hits hardest at 2% battery. Picture glancing down, seeing that red bar and feeling your throat tighten as if the world just cut your lifeline. It's not the gadget itself, but what the gadget represents. Connection, navigation, help on demand. Pull the plug and the mind spirals. What if I miss an emergency call? What if I get lost and can't load a map? The worry often germinates during a single bad disconnect, a dead phone on a late-night walk home, an airport delay with no charger in sight, or waiting hours for medical test results while stuck in a coverage dead zone. The brain pairs that helpless stretch of time with no phone, so even a momentary signal drop now sparks a pulse spike. Soon, habits shift. Portable chargers become fashion accessories, wall outlets get mapped like treasure, and airplane mode feels unthinkable. Friends joke about phantom vibrations. Nomophobes often tap their pockets every few minutes just to confirm weight and warmth. One college student left class 4 times a day to check her charging locker, convinced a single missed text could implode her social life. Underlying it all is the modern truth that phones carry fragments of identity, photos, banking, ride hails. Losing the device feels like losing self. A low-stakes trick some people like: schedule a 10-minute blackout window while at home, power the phone down, drop it in a drawer, and brew tea. Tiny controlled disconnects teach the nervous system that life keeps humming even when the screen stays dark. Jasmine turns 30 today, but you wouldn't know it from her living room. No balloons, no candles, and the cake she baked for co-workers went straight to the freezer. Gerascophobia, the fear that feeling happy will jinx life, has her convinced celebrations invite catastrophe. The pattern started 5 years ago when a surprise promotion was followed the very next day by a car accident. Her brain linked good news equals bad aftermath, and now even a funny meme can trigger a knot in her stomach. The fallout is subtle but constant. She keeps playlists minor key, skips comedies, too light-hearted, and answers maybe later whenever friends suggest a weekend trip. Compliments bounce off like rain on waxed paint. She shrugs them away before they can soak in. Yet the precaution brings its own exhaustion, an emotional crouch that never straightens. Humans are pattern hunters, and a single joy-then-pain pairing can look like cosmic cause and effect. To loosen that grip, some folks start tiny, letting a small pleasure land, a good cup of coffee, a catchy chorus, then pausing to notice that nothing terrible follows. Repeat often enough, and happiness begins to feel like just another colour on the palette, not a warning flare. Pop. One balloon burst can send Leah diving for the nearest exit. Globophobia, the fear of balloons, turns birthday parties into obstacle courses of rubber landmines. The terror isn't just the loud bang, it's the tension of not knowing when that thin latex skin will finally give way. Back in kindergarten, Leah sat beside a classmate gleefully stretching a balloon until it exploded inches from her ear. Since then, even the slow squeak of inflating rubber feels like a countdown. Life adjustments pile up. She RSVPs no to kids' parties, navigates supermarket aisles to avoid helium displays, and dreads office celebrations where a co-worker insists on festive clusters by every desk. During holiday parades, she watches from a TV at home. Giant inflatables may be soft, but they still remind her of that sudden, startling pop. The fear feeds on anticipation. Eyes track every drifting balloon, muscles tighten with each brush of static-charged rubber, and the mind rehearses worst-case scenarios. Friends who've made progress suggest a sound-first approach, listening to recordings of gentle balloon squeaks or distant pops while doing something relaxing. Over time, the noise fades into the background, and real-life balloons start feeling more like harmless party decor than ticking noise grenades. Whatever you do, don't look up. That mantra loops in the mind of someone with automatomophobia, an uneasy fear of mirrors and what they might reveal. It isn't vanity, it's the unnerving thought that glass could flash something unexpected, a lurking figure, a flaw you can't unsee, or a version of yourself that feels strangely separate. Ancient folklore feeds the jitters. Greek myths warned that souls could be trapped in reflective water. Victorian houses draped mirrors after a death so spirits wouldn't get stuck. Mix one childhood jolt, say, catching your half-lit reflection during a power cut, and the superstition suddenly feels practical. Daily life turns into a sidestep routine. Dressing rooms become guess-by-feel zones, webcams stay taped, and late-night walks use store windows as blind spots rather than shortcuts. Even a blank TV screen can spike nerves. Many isotrophobes leave theirs glowing with a dim screensaver just to avoid the Black Mirror effect. One simple trick people share in online forums: start with reflections that don't stare back. A polished spoon, a calm pond, the dark glass on a microwave door. Hold the view for 10 seconds, breathe, walk away. Nothing jumps out, nothing cracks. Repeat with slightly clearer surfaces until, eventually, the bathroom mirror becomes just another piece of household furniture. No portals, no surprises, only the same familiar face you woke up with. On average, rain falls somewhere on Earth every second, yet for someone with ombrophobia, the sound of a single raindrop can feel like a starting pistol for panic. The first clues often appear in childhood. Thunder rattles windows, lightning blacks out the room, and the brain files "wet sky" under imminent danger. From then on, even a grey forecast graphic can tighten shoulders. The fear isn't just about getting soaked. Rain blurs vision, slicks roads and dims daylight, environmental changes that make control feel slippery. Umbrellas help most people. An ombraphobe may see them as flimsy shields that could flip inside out at the worst moment. One commuter keeps a stash of weather apps open like a stock trader monitoring markets, ready to call a ride-share if radar shows a passing shower. Clever detours shape routines. Grocery runs happen before dawn, workouts move indoors for the entire monsoon season, and podcasts with gentle rainfall get an instant skip. Vacation planning begins not with sights to see, but with historical precipitation charts. People who've softened the anxiety recommend starting with a contained drizzle. They'll sit by a window during a mild sprinkle, indoors, warm mug in hand, headphones playing favourite music. The glass acts as a safely sealed aquarium. Rain stays on the other side. After a few calm sessions, stepping onto a covered porch in light mist feels less like stepping into chaos and more like breathing cooler air. Small, controlled doses teach the nervous system that the sky can cry without the world falling apart. Selenophobia, the fear of the moon, makes nightfall feel like an alien invasion. Streetlights switch on, clouds part, and that pale disk seems to hover a little too close, beaming spotlight white onto rooftops and bedroom walls. Some feel their pulse race at the first glimpse. Others keep curtains taped shut, convinced the glow will crawl through gaps. Folklore does the fear no favours. Words like lunacy and moonstruck have long blamed odd behaviour on lunar pull, and horror movies package full moons with werewolves and midnight rituals. Mix in a childhood camping trip where an owl screeched under a glaring moon, or a sleepover prank about the man in the moon watching you, and the subconscious wires night sky to dread. Practical life tweaks pile up. Evening dog walks shift to daylight hours, astronomy documentaries are skipped, and travel plans avoid lodges advertising perfect full moon views. Even smartphone wallpapers get swapped to dark themes. No default lunar photos, thanks. Some selenophobes track lunar calendars the way others track tax deadlines, circling nights to stay indoors. One comfort trick friends share sounds almost like a dare. Spend 5 minutes outside during a crescent phase, dim, low impact, while chatting on the phone with someone you trust. The conversation distracts. The sliver of moonlight stays modest, and the brain quietly learns that nothing spooky swoops down. Over a few cycles, crescents grow to half moons, then to full, until the bright coin in the sky feels less like an omen and more like a familiar street lamp hung extraordinarily high. Forests cover roughly 31% of Earth's land, yet for someone with hylophobia, the fear of wooded areas, even a roadside cluster of trees can feel like a living maze set to swallow them whole. Daylight offers little comfort. Trunks hide what's behind them, and shadows braid together like dark netting under the canopy. Many trace the unease to childhood stories. Hansel and Gretel lost among pines, Big Bad Wolf lurking behind oaks, or urban legend videos filmed in shaky night vision. A single real-world scare, getting turned around on a nature hike or hearing a sudden branch snap while camping, seals the association. From then on, any rustle in leaves signals danger rather than squirrels. Daily routines skew suburban. Jogging paths hug open soccer fields, not woodland trails. Family road trips detour around scenic byways famous for cathedral forests. Even holiday decor can trigger a flinch, for scented candles smell too much like the real thing. One hylophobe keeps GPS on walking mode at all times, just in case a city park wander drifts near dense greenery. A short-range tip people pass around online: start with a single tree. Really, sit on a bench where you can see the trunk, touch the bark, and keep open space at your back. The mind tags that tree as safe territory. Slowly extend the boundary. 2 steps deeper next visit, then 5. Over weeks, the edge of the woods moves inward until, eventually, a leafy path feels more like fresh air than lurking peril. It's estimated that clowns appear at 45% of US children's parties, yet surveys show nearly the same percentage of adults say they find clowns unsettling or worse. That discomfort has a name: Kakorrhaphiophobia, the fear of clowns and their painted-on expressions. One theory pins it on perceptual mismatch. The face says happy, but the frozen grin never moves, leaving the brain unable to read real intent. Cue unease. Origins stack quickly. Circus posters with looming red noses, jump-scare TV ads in the 1990s, a library copy of It Opened to a Lurid Illustration. Small moments that mark grease paint as trouble. When a clown's fake laugh booms through a tinny speaker at a fair, the association locks in. The ripple effect is bigger than birthday RSVPs. People reroute Halloween strolls to dodge yard inflatables, mute fast food commercials starring clown mascots, and feel their pulse spike if a street performer in face paint suddenly turns juggling pins their way. Even neutral emojis, goofy face, get buried from text threads. One low-pressure workaround, many find helpful skips clowns entirely at first. Spend a minute watching a time-lapse of a makeup artist turning a blank face into anything safe. Say, a lion or robot. The brain sees ordinary features disappear under paint and, crucially, re-emerge when the makeup comes off. After a week of that, swapping the video for a clown transformation feels far less jarring. The viewer already knows there's just a normal person underneath all that colour. Can we keep it in the attic, please? That's the first thing many people with pediophobia, the fear of dolls, ask when they spot glassy eyes staring from a shelf. It's not just horror movie porcelain figures, plastic baby dolls, mannequin heads in wig shops, even ventriloquist dummies cue a chill. Something about a human likeness that never blinks feels wrong, as if the toy might finish the stare with a slow, impossible grin. Historians note that dolls were once burial effigies, tiny stand-ins for the deceased. Add modern pop culture, Annabelle, Chucky, endless TikToks of thrift store finds moving at night, and the leap from toy to threat shortens fast. One childhood sleepover prank, where a friend secretly repositioned a doll closer every hour, can hardwire dread. Life workarounds spread quickly. Gift shops with collectible figurines get wide berths. Fashion stores posing child mannequins in mini-jackets earn a quick U-turn. Parents who love vintage decor face a dilemma. Cherished doll collections stay boxed, or visits get politely delayed until they're packed away. People easing the fear often start with incomplete faces. They'll examine featureless artist mannequins, smooth wood, no eyes, while reminding themselves it's just shaped timber. When that feels boring, a doll head with closed lids comes next. Tiny staged wins tell the brain, still object, no hidden motive, no midnight scoot across the floor. Gradually, the glassy-eyed stare loses its bite, and the attic door can stay shut for good reasons, not because a toy army lurks behind it. Fun fact: a single goose feather can contain more than 1 million tiny barbs. No wonder pteronophobia, the fear of being tickled by feathers, exists. The lightest brush across skin can set off alarms faster than a firm poke, because the nerves that detect faint touch evolved to warn us of crawling insects. For a pteronophobe, that warning system sits on hair trigger. Even seeing feathers in a craft store is enough to make their shoulders twitch. Many trace the fear to childhood pranks. older siblings pinning them down for tickle torture, or a parent waving a feather duster until the giggles turned to gasps. The brain recorded helplessness, not humour, and filed feathers under never again. Add in photos of Victorian tickling machines used as quirky punishments, and the association sticks. Everyday life adapts in strange ways. Down pillows are swapped for synthetic fill, dream catchers stay off walls, and pet stores with aisle after aisle of bird toys get avoided altogether. Costume parties? Only if the invitation guarantees 0 boas or angel wings. Even farm visits feel risky. Loose chicken feathers on the path can trigger a wide detour. People who've dialed the panic down often start with weight. They'll handle a single heavy quill, the kind used for calligraphy, while wearing long sleeves. It looks feathery, but doesn't flutter, so the skin stays calm. Once that feels harmless, they graduate to smaller, softer plumes, briefly rolling one between gloved fingers. Small wins teach the body that not every feather is a sneak attack waiting to happen. Some are just quiet souvenirs from the sky. Don't catch feelings, just keep it casual. That mantra loops in the mind of someone with philophobia, the fear of falling in love. Text threads stay dry, dates end before dessert, and compliments bounce off like rubber bullets. It isn't cynicism, it's self-defense. The heart remembers one sharp break, parents' messy divorce, a first love ghosting after "I love you," or watching a friend's engagement implode. The brain files romance under high voltage, handle with gloves. The avoidance shows up everywhere. Playlists skip ballads, rom-coms feel like horror flicks, and social feeds get filtered for wedding hashtags. Even harmless rituals, sharing a spare phone charger, offering a ride, feel risky. Each small gesture looks like a brick in the wall of commitment. One philophobic friend calls it the edge of a cliff disguised as a couch date. Physically, tension spikes when conversations drift to future plans. Shoulders rise, laughter gets clipped, and the mind drafts exit strategies mid-hug. The irony? Loneliness stings too, leaving a tightrope walk between craving and panic. People easing back from the brink start micro-small, agreeing to a 10-minute phone chat with no follow-up expectation, or sharing a personal story no deeper than favourite childhood cereal. The goal isn't fireworks. It's proof that tiny emotional exchanges don't detonate. Stack enough of those, and the word love begins to sound less like a trap door and more like a door you can open when you're ready, knowing you can step back if you need to breathe. 70% of high-rise elevators skip the 13th floor, evidence of triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13, baked right into architecture. Hospitals avoid room 13, airlines skip row 13, and Friday the 13th movies milk the unease for decades. The question isn't why people get nervous, it's how thoroughly the superstition worms into everyday design. Origin stories stretch from Norse myth, Loki crashed a banquet as the uninvited 13th guest, to the Last Supper's 13 at the table. Statisticians point out that 13 is just a prime number between 11 and 17, yet the cultural echo is loud enough that hotel owners lose real money if they label a corridor with it. Daily life shows the ripple. Gamers rename Level 12 +1. Sports teams retire Uniform 13, and some couples reroute wedding dates after glancing at the calendar. One office worker confessed. She changes spreadsheet rows, so critical data never lands on line 13, just in case the project inherits bad luck. The irony. Dodging the number cements its power. A quick perspective flip many people find helpful is to collect Lucky 13 trivia. 13 moons in many lunar calendars, 13 stripes on the US flag, 13 cards in each suit of a deck. Listing positives forces the brain to tag the number with something other than doom, turning a cultural ghost into just another count between 12 and 14. 666 once meant nothing more than 3 digits, yet centuries of lore have branded it the number of the beast. Hexakosioi hexaconta hexaphobia is the result, a chill that hits whenever those sixes line up on a receipt total, hotel room, or license plate idling in traffic. Even the Greek name reads like an incantation, adding weight to the superstition. The fear traces to a single verse in the Book of Revelation that calls 666 the number of a man, later linked to evil. Medieval sermons amplified the warning, and modern horror movies tattooed it on villains' skulls. Now, the digits pop up in everyday tech, file sizes, router IPs, so avoidance takes creativity. Some drivers pay extra to skip 666 plates. Cashiers re-ring totals to $6.65 with a penny discount. A US highway famously renumbered Route 666 to Route 491 to calm uneasy tourists. Beyond logistics lies real stress. Heart rate spikes at checkout, sweaty palms when floor numbers jump from 665 to 667 in an elevator. One coder admitted he rewrites loops if a line count lands on 666, fearing a cursed bug shipment. A quick mindset flip many people like is turning 666 into 999. Rotate the digits mentally whenever they appear. It's a tiny optical trick, but it reminds the brain that numbers themselves are neutral symbols. Meaning is what we choose to stick to them. Sounds silly until a rooster flaps straight at your face. That's how people with allodoxaphobia, the fear of chickens, defend their panic. On factory farms, birds outnumber humans 3 to 1. For a phobic mind, that statistic reads like an uprising waiting to happen. Feathers whirl, talons scratch, and even a gentle cluck feels like a threat in Morse code. The dread usually starts with one bad encounter. A childhood petting zoo rooster spurring legs, a beak pecking breadcrumbs off tiny fingers, or a late-night video of battery cage footage playing on loop. The brain bundles birds and danger, filing the entire Gallus domesticus family under attack mode. Avoidance ripples outward. Road trips detour around free-range farms. Omelettes taste safer when the cook confirms no live hens roam the back alley, and kids' books featuring friendly cartoon chicks go straight to the donation box. One gardener stopped composting eggshells. The idea of inviting neighbourhood hens over the fence made her skin crawl. Here's a soft entry point many find manageable. Watch a silent, slow-motion clip of a chicken walking. No squawks, no sudden flaps, just the odd, almost comical strut. Repeat until the waddle looks more awkward than menacing. Next step might be peering through a wire fence at real birds while chatting with a friend about anything except chickens. Little by little, the flock morphs from living jump scare into something closer to bouncing feather dusters. Still noisy, maybe, but not quite apocalyptic. Only 0.15% of Americans are diagnosed with skin cancer each year, yet to someone with heliophobia, the fear of sunlight, even that small statistic feels like a siren. A clear sky looks less like good weather and more like an open furnace, beaming down radiation. Midday errands get shuffled to dusk. Blinds stay clenched so tightly that houseplants lean like drunkards in search of a glimmer. The route is often vivid. A childhood sunburn that bubbled, a health class slideshow of melanoma scar stories, or a vampire-themed sleepover where friends swore daylight could turn bodies to ash. The brain merges those images with UV rays, labelling every shaft of light a potential burn notice. Daily life becomes a shade choreography. sun factor 50 lotion indoors, wide brim hats for a 30-second mailbox walk, blackout curtains battling the smallest pencil-thin beam. Vacation photos show tour buses, not beaches. Colleagues joke about the night shift friend who's never seen at lunch. One heliophobic gamer sets system themes to dark mode and dims monitors until they resemble moonlit windows. A low-stakes trick that's helped some: start with dawn. Step outside just as the horizon blushes, light levels rival late twilight, UV is minimal, and birds are the only witnesses. Spend 2 minutes sipping coffee while watching shadows stretch. Over a few weeks, the nervous system rewrites its memo. Early sunlight didn't scorch, midday might not either, especially with that trusty SPF on standby. Victorians added tiny bells to coffins so the not quite dead could call for help, a macabre workaround that still sends shivers today. That history fuels taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive. For those who feel it, stepping into an MRI tube or even pulling bed covers over the face can echo the nightmare of trapped earth and thinning air. Pop culture keeps the dread fresh. Edgar Allan Poe's The Premature Burial, Hitchcock episodes with clawed coffin lids, and news snippets about mispronounced deaths in remote clinics. Add one personal scare: waking during surgery anesthesia, getting stuck in a car trunk during a childhood game, and the brain decides any enclosed box could be the last place it sees daylight. Practical life tweaks pop up in odd places. Cremation pamphlets sit ready on nightstands just in case. Claustrophobic elevator rides include a finger hovering over the emergency button, camping friends zipping a sleeping bag over their heads. Hard pass, even tight turtlenecks can feel like soil pressing down. One grounding tip people share skips coffins entirely. Lie on the floor with a light blanket just over the legs, not the chest, while listening to an upbeat podcast. The body feels still, but breathing stays unrestricted, and playful dialogue keeps the mind above ground. Repeat often, inching the blanket higher as comfort builds. Eventually, the thought of enclosed spaces starts to register as controlled rather than catastrophic. Friday lands on the 13th this month, no big deal, right? For someone with paraskevidocatria, the fear of Friday the 13th, that casual reminder can feel like a weather alert for impending doom. Vacation bookings freeze, stock trades pause, and even toast-making gets delayed until the calendar flips. A few statistics fan the flames. The US economy is said to lose up to $900 million each unlucky Friday from cancelled flights and skipped business deals. Pop culture piles on with masked slashers, office pranks, and hotels missing floor 13. Blend that drip feed of mythology with one personal mishap, a fender bender or bad test score that happened to fall on the date, and the pattern locks in. Routines shift accordingly. Dental checkups get bumped forward a week, wedding planners scan years ahead to dodge the day, and social feeds fill with stay-safe memes that only tighten nerves. One software engineer schedules code deployments around the calendar, convinced any push on the 13th invites gremlins into production. People who've loosened the grip often flip the script. They designate Friday the 13th as try something small day, ordering a new menu item, wearing mismatched socks, turning superstition into a quirky personal holiday. When the worst consequence is a flavour you didn't love, the date starts to look less cursed and more like a built-in excuse for harmless experimentation. 92% of humans feel at least mild discomfort when they see dense clusters of tiny holes. Think lotus seed pods or a honeycomb viewed up close. For the 15% who experience trypophobia, that discomfort flips to full-scale revulsion. Skin crawls, scalp prickles, and a wave of nausea or itching hits the body like static. Researchers suggest our brains flag these patterns because diseased skin, venomous animals, and mouldy food often share the same repeat dot texture. Evolution's early warning filter simply fires too loudly. Modern triggers lurk everywhere: aerated chocolate bars, bathroom sponges, close-up latte foam pics, even photoshopped ads that slip pore-covered visuals into fashion campaigns. Avoidance becomes a scavenger hunt. Social media thumbnails get blurred, 3D movie trailers are skipped, CGI loves holy textures, and Art 101 still-life assignments featuring seed pods earn a quick veto. Some trypophobes set phone backgrounds to solid colours so unexpected image previews don't jump scare them between apps. A quick reset many folks use is the distance glance. First, view the offending image from across a room, small enough that clusters blur together. Take a deep breath, look away, then step half a pace closer. Repeating this short approach and break cycle keeps the brain from feeling trapped, and over time the pattern loses its shock value, transforming from threat texture back into nothing more than dots on a surface. For someone with arithmophobia, the fear of numbers, counting past a certain point can feel like stepping onto a swaying rope bridge. Digits on receipts, apartment doors, even price tags spark a flutter in the chest. Math homework is a full-blown obstacle course of symbols that look more like tiny threats than tools. The unease often starts early. A panicked blank-out during a timed multiplication test, or adults joking, "You'll never get into college if you can't do fractions." Add a family budget crisis where numbers on bills spelled stress and the brain begins pairing digits with danger. Ripple effects sneak into daily routines. Restaurant splits get dodged. "Just put it all on your card, I'll PayPal later." Fitness apps stay unused, GPS mileage ignored, and phone passcodes carefully chosen so they're easy to type without thinking. One baker swaps measuring cups for eyeballing recipes, preferring the risk of a lopsided cake to the sight of a digital scale ticking upward. Friends who've lightened the load recommend treating numbers like foreign words. Pick one harmless phrase, say 2 plus 2, and repeat it while doing something calming, like sipping tea or petting a dog. Gradually add a different vocabulary word, maybe 7, once the first feels boring. Before long, the symbols start to look less like traps and more like just another set of marks the world uses to keep things organized. Scratch, scratch in the pantry wall, instant alarm. Musophobia, the fear of mice or rats, turns harmless scurries into heart-racing threats. History hasn't helped. Plagues blamed on rodents, cartoons depicting scheming vermin, and jump-scare videos where something furry darts across a kitchen floor. The fear often starts small. A childhood sleepover where a mouse zipped across a flashlight beam, or a squeak that echoed through classroom silence. The brain files that zap of surprise under "never again," so any rustle in dry leaves or twitch of a shadow sets nerves on edge. Daily life adjusts. Snack bags stay sealed in plastic bins. Basement storage trips happen only in broad daylight. City park benches get skipped because pigeons aren't the only scavengers. Apartment hunts prioritize top-floor units, farther from alley dumpsters, and sticky traps under the sink feel like essential home decor. Even Pixar's Ratatouille gets a hard pass on movie night. One low-pressure tactic some people swear by: watch a 30-second clip of a domesticated fancy mouse exploring a miniature playground. No shrieks, no jump cuts, just soft squeaks and tiny paws on popsicle stick bridges. Replaying that harmless scene trains the brain to separate cute pet from disease-carrying intruder. Over time, the sight of a real mouse scurrying outside might still be startling, but not automatically terrifying. Astronomers estimate the Milky Way houses 100 billion stars. Pure wonder for most skywatchers, pure dread for someone with sidorophobia, the fear of stars or outer space. Look up on a clear night, and the mind doesn't whisper beautiful. It hisses infinite, cold, nowhere to hide. One spark often lights the fear, a childhood planetarium visit where the lights snapped off to reveal a dome of stars that felt crushingly vast, a late-night documentary warning of rogue asteroids, or simply lying on a campsite sleeping bag and realizing the sky never ends. The brain pairs that vastness with vulnerability, tiny human, endless dark. Daily tweaks follow. Evening strolls stop at twilight, blackout curtains become must-have decor, sci-fi movies set in deep space get an instant skip, friends gush over meteor showers, siderophobes track cloud cover and pray for overcast skies. Some city dwellers cite light pollution as a blessing. Sodium street glow keeps the constellations muted, anxiety at bay. A bite-size workaround many have tried starts indoors. Download a star map app, but set it to day mode, muted blues instead of black. Spend a minute tracing familiar constellations on the screen, Orion, Ursa Major, while the ceiling light stays on. Once those dots feel like simple patterns, step onto a balcony the next clear night and find just one real star that matches the app. Naming it turns an overwhelming universe into a single known point, often the first crack in a fear that's been as wide as the sky itself. For someone living with scopophobia, the fear of being stared at, every crowded space feels like a fishbowl. A bus ride, a Zoom call, even walking past store mannequins can trigger the sense of a spotlight hunting them down. The heart races not from what people say, but from what their silent gaze might be judging. The fear often roots in a single burn. Classmates snickering after a presentation, a parent's prolonged glare during scolding, or a viral photo where strangers' comments weren't kind. The brain files prolonged eye contact under danger, exposure, shame. Life becomes a choreography of avoidance. Seats in restaurants, always back to the wall. Sunglasses on cloudy days, hood pulled low in supermarkets, webcams taped for good measure. One graphic designer switched to freelancing largely to dodge open-plan offices teeming with glances over cubicle walls. A curious trick that's helped some. Start with inanimate eyes. Practice making direct eye contact with your own reflection for the length of a song chorus. 30 seconds, give or take. No judgments, just acknowledge the face looking back. Over a week, upgrade to a trusted friend or pet. Hold the gaze, exchange a smile, then break. Tiny, controlled doses teach the nervous system that not every set of eyes is a verdict. Sometimes they're just another pair of pupils taking in the view. Infinity shows up everywhere. The sideways infinity on a calculator, the edge-to-edge stars in a James Webb photo, the thought experiment of numbers that never end. For someone with apeirophobia, the fear of infinity or endlessness, even that tidy lemniscate symbol can spark vertigo. Their mind imagines falling through limitless space or counting upward forever with no way to stop, and the stomach drops as if an elevator cable just snapped. Origins differ. A late-night philosophy class that asked, "What came before the universe?" A childhood nightmare of walking down a hallway that stretched farther each time a door opened. Or maybe a grief moment at a funeral when the phrase "eternal rest" suddenly felt suffocating instead of soothing. However it starts, the brain pairs endless with overwhelming, so looped patterns, spirals, mirrors facing mirrors, even endless scroll social feeds can trigger a rush of panic. The ripple is surprisingly practical. People mute documentaries about space expansion, quit video games with procedurally generated worlds, and prefer paperback books to e-readers because physical pages promise a final chapter. Meditation apps that encourage limitless awareness get deleted after one uneasy session. A small, friendly reframe some use is swapping infinity for cycles. Sunrise, seasons, breathing. Each loop technically repeats forever, yet every circuit has a clear beginning and end you can feel. Daylight returns, winter melts, lungs empty, then fill. By focusing on bounded loops instead of endless lines, the concept of forever shifts from a bottomless pit to a familiar circle you've already travelled many times without falling in. Every minute somewhere on Earth, roughly 200 people vomit, a grim but ordinary statistic. For those with emetophobia, an intense fear of vomiting or seeing others vomit, that number reads like a global siren. They map out life to dodge any hint of nausea. Aisle seats near exits, food thermometers for takeout, and perfumed hand sanitizer as a psychological shield. The phobia often anchors to a vivid episode, a stomach flu night that felt unending, or being trapped on a school bus when a classmate lost it down the aisle. The brain registers the mix of helplessness and disgust, then stamps every gag reflex as a red alert signal. Ripple effects reach far, street food stalls become no-go zones, roller coaster invites get polite refusals, even pregnancy plans may pause over morning sickness worries. Streaming services? Horror is fine, but any scene involving retching gets an instant skip. Researchers note the fear isn't just about physical illness, it's the loss of control. Stomach muscles seize, breathing falters, and dignity feels at stake. Because of that, some emetophobes experiment with control cues rather than exposure. Simple practices, keeping ginger candies on hand, learning slow belly breathing, or tracking food safety temps, provide a sense of preparedness that, over time, can shrink the perceived threat. Sorry, I already ate. That line is a common shield for those living with deipnophobia, the fear of dining conversations or formal meals. It's not the food itself. It's the prospect of speaking while chewing, clinking cutlery in silence, or being judged for choosing the wrong fork. A dinner invitation can feel like a test with no study guide. Stories behind the fear vary. One origin thread is childhood, a teacher ridiculing table manners during a class banquet, or a tense family holiday where every bite carried unspoken arguments. Others recall a single, choking scare that made speaking around food seem hazardous. Eventually, any meal that implies social scrutiny sets off a pulse spike. Daily strategies become elaborate. Calendar apps block out phantom engagements during office luncheons. First dates pivot to coffee walks. Remote workers mute microphones the instant a snack appears on screen. Some deipnophobes choose counter-service restaurants over table service to skip lingering conversations entirely. Even Thanksgiving can morph into a plate fixed on the couch arm, TV volume turned up to drown out obligatory chit-chat. Researchers point out that eating is already a vulnerable act, mouth open, hands messy, attention divided. Layering social performance over that can amplify discomfort. To reclaim a little ease, people with deipnophobia sometimes host silent bite trials, sharing finger foods during a movie where dialogue absorbs the pressure, proving that shared eating needn't equal spotlighted small talk. At any given moment, you're inhaling molecules shed by everything around you: coffee grounds, city buses, strangers' perfume. For people with olfactophobia, the fear of smells, that invisible cocktail, feels like an ambush. A whiff of frying onions can trigger a head spin. The musk of a crowded elevator reads like toxic fog. Triggers differ. Some trace it to a single nauseating incident: food poisoning after a curry night, or passing a garbage truck on a sweltering day and fainting from the stench. Others link it to medical trauma, the sharp hospital disinfectant that preceded bad news. The brain ballparks all strong odours under one label: threat. Life adapts in creative ways. Grocery runs happen at dawn before bakeries start churning cinnamon swirls. Dates pick outdoor patios over candlelit bistros to keep scents diffused. A few offices quietly swap communal coffee pots for single-serve pods so no aroma lingers in the hallway. One survey of fragrance-free workplaces found policy requests often come from olfactophobes, who'd rather negotiate paperwork than brave a colleague's cologne. Researchers note that smell ties directly to the brain's emotion center, bypassing many rational filters. Because of that shortcut, some olfactophobes choose neutral zone training, spending short periods in places renowned for clean air, high-ceiling art galleries, libraries with strict scent policies, then slowly venturing to mildly aromatic spots like flower markets during off-peak hours. Reports suggest those graded steps can shrink the list of danger smells, even if the nose never warms to a sizzling onion pan. Pedophobia, the fear of bald people, sounds niche until you glance around a busy airport and notice just how many shiny scalps you pass. For someone with this phobia, each one can spark a jolt of unease. The mind fixates on the smooth head, reads it as unnatural or even menacing, and urges a fast exit. Historians guess the worry dates back to eras when barber-shaved heads signalled disease or punishment. Add pop culture villains, Lex Luthor, Lord Voldemort, and the association deepens. Many paladophobes point to a childhood scare, a stern, hairless teacher leaning in too close, or a hospital visit where a beloved relative had lost hair to illness. The brain merged bald with bad news, and the shorthand stuck. Avoidance soon shapes routines. Salon ads featuring buzz-cut models get scrolled past, seating choices in theatres tilt toward rows with plenty of buffer, and meeting invites from a smooth-domed manager raise quiet dread. Some even rehearse polite gaze tactics so eyes don't linger on a colleague's head during conversation. Therapists note the fear is really about unfamiliarity. Hair is such a default feature that its absence registers as a visual alarm. People looking to dial the reaction down sometimes start with photos of famously friendly figures, think Terry Crews or Sir Patrick Stewart, viewed in quick, timed bursts. The goal is simple repetition. The more bald heads the brain logs as neutral, the less each new encounter rings that old alarm bell. A bouquet on a cafe table, a field of daisies by the roadside, scenes most people find charming. Yet for someone with anthropophobia, the fear of flowers, each petal hides a spike of anxiety. Bright colours signal insect magnet, pollen clouds threaten sneezes or worse, and layered petals can resemble tiny, lurking mouths. Origins often stem from a single bad bloom. A bee sting during a childhood picnic, a funeral wreath linked forever to grief, or an allergy test that ended in hives after a rose-scented sample. The brain generalizes, and soon even silk arrangements or floral print fabrics start to feel suspect. Everyday adjustments bloom accordingly. Wedding RSVPs hinge on centerpiece plans, springtime walks reroute away from botanical gardens, and friends know to skip the flower emoji in texts. One office worker negotiated for a minimalist lobby makeover just to remove the fresh lily display that greeted employees each Monday. Botanists observing the phobia note, it isn't always about allergies or insects. Sometimes it's the intricate symmetry, nature's own Rorschach, that unsettles the eye. To ease reactions, people with anthropophobia sometimes begin with deconstructed flowers, individual petals or pressed specimens under glass. Viewing those flat, scentless pieces strips away unpredictability, letting the mind register harmless plant material before facing the full, fragrant version. A single mature oak can weigh 10 tons and live for centuries. Impressive, unless you have dendrophobia, the fear of trees. In that case, the towering trunk looks less like nature's monument and more like a looming wall ready to topple without warning. Branches creak, shadows shift, and leaves rustle like whispering conspirators overhead. For many, the dread traces back to a storm scene, wind howling through limbs, a neighbour's maple crashing onto a roof, or childhood tales of haunted woods where trees grabbed unsuspecting wanderers. Films that animate forests, think Snow White or The Evil Dead, add fuel, making bark seem capable of malice. Daily life narrows around open horizons. Picnic spots favour treeless meadows, jogging routes hug city streets, holiday road trips skirt scenic byways lined with dense evergreens. Gardening plans stop at shrubs, and property searches rule out lots boasting majestic shade. One apartment hunter even asked maintenance to trim a courtyard sycamore because its silhouette cast nighttime shapes against her blinds. Psychologists note the fear often centres on unpredictability, roots you can't see, limbs that could snap, hollows hiding insects or animals. To chip away at that unease, some dendrophobes begin with cut and dried exposure, literally. A small slice of polished wood becomes a desktop coaster, safe to touch and inspect. From there, brief visits to a sapling in a public park, thin trunk, few overhead branches, allow the mind to log a tree as inert, not impending. Over time, those quiet introductions can turn an entire grove from threat to simply part of the landscape. On a summer evening, 75 bats can swoop from a single attic vent in under 10 seconds, thrilling for wildlife fans, unnerving for anyone with chiroptophobia, the fear of bats. Evolution primes us to flinch at sudden wing beats in the dark. Vampire legends and horror posters simply finish the job. Many phobics trace the alarm to one moment: a bat tangled in bedroom curtains, the screech of tiny claws on roof tiles at 3 a.m, or a biology class film describing rabies in graphic detail. From then on, any flutter overhead registers as a needle-toothed missile, caves and barns are avoided, dusk barbecues wrap up before sunset, and Halloween decor featuring felt wings can cut short a grocery run. Misconceptions amplify the tension. Bats aren't blind, but their erratic flight, actually expert insect chasing, looks chaotic to a startled eye. They rarely attack hare, yet that myth keeps heads ducking whenever a shadow darts under street lamps. Researchers note the fear revolves less around fangs than unpredictability in low light. To soften the reaction, some chiroptophobes begin with audio only. Short recordings of gentle bat chirps played at low volume while they read or scroll feeds. Hearing the sound divorced from the swoop helps the brain tag it as background, not ambush. Over time, viewing slow-motion footage, wings moving like delicate umbrellas rather than dive bombers, becomes easier, and actual twilight skies feel a notch less sinister. Please don't touch me. The request sounds polite, but for people with haplophobia, the fear of being touched, it hides an urgent subtext. Sudden contact can jolt the nervous system like a live wire. Even friendly gestures, a handshake, a congratulatory pat on the back, trigger a full-body flinch. The fear often roots in past breach of personal space, a rough childhood haircut, an invasive medical procedure, or harassment that taught the skin to brace for impact. Once the body pairs touch with loss of control, every unexpected brush feels like rounding a corner into oncoming traffic. Daily life adapts with quiet choreography. Commutes happen off-peak to dodge shoulder-to-shoulder crowds. Clothing leans loose to keep fabric from clinging. Photos feature a practiced, hands clasped in front pose that discourages side hugs. Even virtual meetings can be a relief, not because of convenience, but because no one can reach through a screen. Therapists note the reaction is less about germ fear than boundary fear. Some haplophobes find a starter exercise in textiles, running fingers across different fabrics, silk, denim, fleece, while naming each sensation out loud. The focus stays on texture, not threat, letting the brain relearn that contact can be neutral and fully under the wearer's command. Over time, that simple fabric drill can make the prospect of a controlled, consensual handshake feel a shade less electric. Bananaphobia, the fear of bananas, sounds like a comedy sketch until you watch someone break into a sweat at the sight of a yellow curve. For them, the fruit's slick peel, stringy threads, and sweet-sour odour combine into one queasy trigger. Even supermarket end caps stacked with bunches can feel like barricades. Origins differ wildly. Some trace the dread to a childhood gag when older siblings mashed bananas into unexpected places, pillowcases, lunchboxes, leaving a lingering smell of overripe sugar and betrayal. Others recall a slip and fall on a discarded peel that morphed the fruit into a literal trip hazard. A handful blame texture. That first mushy bite cemented, slimy, and inedible as inseparable concepts. Everyday adjustments soon pile up. Breakfast menus stick to berries. Smoothie shops require careful scanning for tropical blends. Office kitchens prompt stealth checks before opening the communal fridge. One commuter memorized which subway ads display giant banana photos each quarter, planning car choices accordingly. Food psychologists note the aversion often centers on the peel phase. Cracking it open releases a concentrated aroma and reveals the fibrous strings many find revolting. People who want to shrink the reflex sometimes start with distance exposure, watching a cooking clip where bananas stay unpeeled, then advancing to dried banana chips. No peel, no strings. Reports suggest that stepping stone approach helps the brain file the fruit under manageable, or at least easy to dodge in the produce aisle. Staircases are ordinary engineering, 20 or so steps connecting one floor to the next. Yet for someone with climacophobia, the fear of stairs or climbing, each tread can look like a mouth about to snap shut. The threat isn't just height, it's the steady rhythm of one misstep equals a tumble playing on repeat. Trigger moments vary. A slippery marble flight that sent a suitcase and its owner crashing at an airport. Childhood fire drills hustling kids down metal fire escapes that clanged and shook. Even viral security cam clips of falls can lodge the image deep enough that every staircase afterward feels suspect. Workarounds shape daily routes. Elevators become lifelines, even for a single floor. Spiral staircases in historic towers are an automatic nope, and movie theatres with stadium seating mean late arrivals. Better to grab seats near ground level than face the narrow, dimly lit descent afterward. Some travellers choose hotels solely by lobby location, ground floor or bust. Engineers note that steepness and openness matter. A shallow, carpeted staircase with a solid wall on one side feels safer than see-through glass risers hovering over an atrium. With that in mind, people aiming to ease their nerves sometimes start on wide exterior steps, think library plazas, where each riser is shallow and there's plenty of room to pause. Observing those steps as stable, not slippery traps, helps the brain rewrite the equation from stairs fall to stairs, just another path upward. Please, no speeches, just sign my name for me. That plea hints at scriptophobia, the fear of writing in public or having one's handwriting scrutinized. A blank form on a clipboard turns into a stage as bright as any spotlight. Pens feel heavier, letters wobble, and the line behind you seems to breathe down your neck. Historians trace part of the anxiety to older schoolrooms where penmanship grades hung alongside math scores. A single red ink circle around a shaky loop could brand writing as a judgment arena. Modern triggers add fuel. Signature mismatches at the bank, co-workers' eyes lingering on brainstorm notes, even the permanence of ink on a birthday card. Avoidance tactics get inventive. Digital signatures replace pen strokes whenever possible. Grocery lists stay on phones. Whiteboards at work become someone else's domain. One musician keeps a signing rubber stamp for merch tables, sparing himself the panic of autograph lines. Graphologists say handwriting feels intimate. Share it, and you reveal quirks you can't edit. Because of that, people with scriptophobia sometimes rehearse with throwaway paper, scribbling nonsense words on recycled sheets, then shredding them immediately. Knowing the evidence will vanish helps the hand loosen up, and each painless scrawl chips away at the notion that every penned mark is a public verdict.